time, but it would be weeks, not months. He said that negotiations had not begun in earnest, but that the US had exchanged messages with Iran and received indications from the Iranians about a willingness to talk. And still in the background is the possibility of US boots on the ground. Rubio, though, said that the US could achieve its goals in Iran without any ground troops.
That came after the US delayed a threat to attack Iran's energy infrastructure to the 6th of April. The US president said the deadline extension request came from Tehran. Donald Trump added that talks were going very well, but Iran's leadership says the peace proposal floated by Washington was excessive and unfair. Ross Cullen reports from the Turkish city of Van near the Iran border.
Iran has not confirmed publicly that it is in direct negotiations with the United States, but it's understood that back-channel talks are being held between Washington and Tehran, with various countries involved in conveying messages back and forth, including Egypt, Pakistan and Turkey. According to reports in the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump is considering sending another 10,000 ground troops to the Middle East ahead of a possible incursion into Iran, on top of the more than 3,000 soldiers already on their way to the Gulf.
A report from the OECD predicts the UK economy will be hit harder than any other industrialised nation due to the conflict in the Middle East, with inflation expected to spike and the jobs market weaken. Stuart Smith has more from London.
Goods and services are likely to get much more expensive much more quickly as the US and Israeli war with Iran drags on, and the United Kingdom is going to be particularly hard hit according to the OECD's analysis. Inflation was predicted to be 2.5% this year, but is now forecast to be 4%. That will impact UK growth more than similar nations like Italy, France and Germany, who analysts say are less exposed to energy shocks. For London, that means a predicted 40% decrease in annual growth this year, even if oil and commodity prices stabilise by summer. The think tank claims efforts to increase domestic energy use and rely less on imported fuels should help. The UK government says it's already doing that, but opposition parties claim the disproportionate impact of the war on the British economy is evidence that the government's policies aren't working.
The International Olympic Committee this week banned transgender women from Olympic competition, saying the new policy promotes fairness. The eligibility change comes after US President Donald Trump signed an executive order last year banning transgender girls and women from competing in female sports ahead of the 2028 Los Angeles Summer Games. Tony Waterman reports.
Under the new policy, only biological females will be allowed to compete in the Olympics starting in 2028. Their sex will be determined by a mandatory one-time genetic test. IOC President Kirsty Coventry said the decision was based on science, which she says shows males have a performance advantage in sports that rely on strength, power, and endurance.
At the Olympic Games, even the smallest margins can be the difference between victory and defeat. So it's absolutely clear that it would not be fair for biological males to compete in the female category.
It's unclear how many, if any, athletes may be impacted. The IOC says these individuals would still be eligible to compete in the male competitions.
And finally, there was some good news this week. An endangered mountain gorilla has given birth to twins in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Conservationists say twin births are very rare in mountain gorillas. Chris Ochimaringa has more from Kinshasa.
Park rangers at the Virunga National Park found a gorilla nursing twins deep in the dense rainforest in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The female gorilla from the Baraka family delivered a female and a male baby. Experts say twins are extremely rare in mountain gorillas, accounting for less than 1% of births. Park rangers are monitoring them to ensure they grow into adults. The Virunga National Park is a very dangerous place for wild animals and park rangers because many rebels and poachers operate in the area. The twins' birth comes 2 months after another gorilla delivered twins.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann, and that was the Week in Review.
The FBI has successfully executed a raid on the Visa Corporation, exposing what could be the largest credit card scam in U.S. history. According to authorities, the Visa syndicate for years fooled millions of Americans by issuing convincing-looking credit cards carefully designed to dupe consumers into spending far more money than they had. Investigators believe the fraudulent corporation also lured victims in with enticing rewards programs and free gifts, thereby trapping them in a spiral of debt they could never hope to repay. According to the results of a groundbreaking new study, 96% of humans would rather be a singing, dancing animatronic bear. The study finds that a great majority of people on the planet would prefer to trade in their regular lives for one in which they sat on a plastic log, strummed a banjo, and sang songs on a stage with all their goofy bear friends. Respondents also stated that not being a sentient human being with feelings of doubt, sadness, and pain contributed to the decision.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. It's talk radio you control. You can get your voice on the air by calling 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Stu,
Riley O'Bill,
and coming through Jitsi, it's Mark Edge.
Yes, we're happy to have Mark with us tonight.
It's nice to have him remotely.
Yeah, what?
It's more fun to have you in studio, Mark, but it's nice to have you remotely.
Yep.
I agree. I would love to be up there, and it's not possible tonight.
Yep. In studio's better, but we're happy to have you either way.
For those that want to catch me more regularly, I'm doing a show with Sal the Agorist on X on Wednesday nights. He's down in St. Petersburg, and that's pretty fun to do too.
Nice. That sounds like fun.
What's the name of the show?
Well, it doesn't really. It's going to be called Sal and Mark,
Okay.
because what's the point if you're just clicking on Sal the Agorist's, feed in order to watch?
Okay.
No, it doesn't need to be a big name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be kind of shocking, but I've never actually used Twitter or X platform for anything.
I can't say that I'm very good at these sorts of things, but I just go in the studio and do a show of which a task I am very suited for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the point of this show is that it's a live call-in show. So we're going to go to the phones. We have Dave Ridley who's already called in. Dave Ridley, what's on your mind tonight?
Hey, guys. This is something that actually I got from Mark. I was listening to Mark's interview with Jason Sorens, which is, I don't know how long ago it was, but Jason was just brimming with details about all the different victories for the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance in the legislature.
Yeah, I thought it was a great interview, and I can't tell you when exactly it happened either, but it's gotten a new life recently.
So I had three that stuck in my mind. I always like to say that the real litmus test of whether you're making progress in liberty or not is the size of the state budget. So I guess they cut it by 7%.
That's incredible, right? Like the big cut that came in, I think it was 2011, was almost 12%, and that was awesome.
The whole budget?
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I imagine that's a chunk of money.
And the other number is, I guess they cut the budget for all the state-run universities by 17%.
Yeah, the Democrats are saying the Republicans hate education, but honestly, these universities, they're just overfunded. I don't know how else to describe it.
No,
it just doesn't cost what it costs to.
They churn out absolute garbage too. They're really not worth the money.
Yeah,
especially in the age of YouTube, when you can learn anything you want now.
I think it was either Jason or you, Mark, who were making the point that the Republicans were actively funding their own enemies because these Democrats control these institutions. So why should Republicans be forced to underwrite them?
Right. Yeah,
And
that's fundamentally the idea is that most people who come out of university have had their little minds warped by their professors who are at this point almost exclusively left of center. And in many cases, way left of center.
Yeah. And the third factoid that stuck in my brain was I guess they have, I don't really know exactly how to describe this or what the word for it is. Deregulation may not be the right word. They have made it possible for people to just have their own electrical grids. Like, it's the first state in the union that has done this in 100 years. I don't know of any developed country that's done this, but basically you can just, like, I guess you could have your own neighborhood grid, or you could just set up a company in the middle of nowhere and build your own solar and have your own grid.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to do, but if you can get people who want to be on your little system, this allows, say, 4 people to get together and have a solar field with some batteries and these kinds of things. Why shouldn't that be illegal?
I imagine
Why shouldn't that be legal?
I imagine you'll see some neighborhoods try this out, and if it turns out to be feasible, there go the power companies.
I think it's a better idea than that. I think it's a better idea to have, decentralized power and have neighborhoods build their own grids rather than have a centralized power company, because a centralized power company, they might be able to deliver power better, but at the same time, if it's decentralized, you don't have to worry about going to one big monolithic power company to pay a bill to. You can go to your neighbor down the street who's supplying you solar, or maybe a small bit of nuclear power too, if they have small enough cells.
And you could build it robust, like buried in the ground instead of suspended on these weak pine poles that get knocked over by trees every winter. And
yeah, exactly.
You could also, when the technology is available, but maybe you've got some engineer who lives next door, you never know. The idea of these thorium salt reactors, these meltdown proof reactors, once you can get that online, then we're in great shape. It's really crazy that we split the atom in 1944 and we're still burning dead dinosaurs to power the grid. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, they have nuclear powered engines for submarines, which I imagine is about as much power as you need for like a neighborhood. So I don't see why you can't just get one of those engines and set it up.
I think people are really scared of nuclear power, and understandably so, but at the same time, if it works better, if we found a way to contain it in such a way, then it wouldn't be the problem that people think it is.
My understanding is that it's actually pretty safe, and pretty much every time they fail, it's due to either sabotage or complete incompetence.
Or earthquakes.
And these thorium reactors, even more so on the safe side of things. Really hard to get one to melt down from what I understand about them.
Let's not forget that big government basically caused 2 of the 3 meltdowns when it comes to nuclear power. And I was only talking about thorium salt reactors. And the third one was caused by the biggest tidal wave to ever hit Japan. And I think that this is really important, is if you look at all the people who died during the 3 meltdowns of nuclear power, and then you look at how many people die to deliver you oil every year.
Mm-hmm.
And as I understand the numbers, and I'm not sitting here looking at them right now, but as I understand those numbers, the answer is more people die per year to bring fossil fuels to the world than have died in all nuclear accidents up to this point.
Yeah, and the number of people killed by, I heard at least, the number of people killed by the evacuation at Fukushima in Japan, which was the least bad government, the most competently handled disaster, nuclear disaster, they there were more people killed in the evacuation than were killed by radiation. I'm not sure anyone was killed by radiation.
Yeah, I'm not sure they were either.
But yeah, with regard to the New Hampshire, the change in the New Hampshire law, this has a dual effect on disaster preparedness, because if you've got a very small grid like that, it's very unlikely to go down because the distance transmitting the electricity is not very far. So you have this sort of localized, relatively safe electricity that's safe from disasters to a large extent. And in putting these networks up, each neighborhood will become closer together if a neighborhood does that.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll figure out how to solve the free rider problems and these sorts of things and setting up neighborhood grids. I'm not sure exactly how do you do it, but I don't have to know. This is the problem of people who want to put up their own grids, and now they're free to in New Hampshire, and I don't see any reason they shouldn't be.
Yep, I agree. And it seems like a real easy problem to solve. Like if there's a if you move into a place that's got one of these set up, and they've already shouldered the burden of the cost to set up the solar field, and they demand that you pitch in, you would have options anyway. You could set up solar panels on your roof to power just your house, or I'm sure there would be plenty of alternatives, which you don't get a lot of with the big power companies.
No. But New Hampshire has changed that over time too. I think it was about 15 years ago. They made it so that, you could choose between companies. Before that, the way it is here in Florida is you just get a power company and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's how it is in California too. And that hasn't worked out so well for them.
Yeah.
Rolling blackouts are a thing in California, and I don't want to have that come to New Hampshire. So I think the idea of having a decentralized power grid sounds like a wonderful idea.
Yep.
Yeah, Riley hates it when the lights go out.
Exactly, I do. So much. It's very difficult.
All right, Dave, you got anything else?
That's all.
All right, thanks for the call.
Thanks, Dave.
If you want to get on the air like Dave did, you can call 603-283-6160. Otherwise, we're going to talk about what we want to. And I believe what we want to talk about is 50 surprising things Americans actually agree on.
That's what I want to talk about anyway.
Yeah. It sounds good to me.
Let's get into it.
I bet I disagree with, at least 26 of them.
Yeah, I think so too. This is from CBS News.
A reputable news source.
That's so they claim. A guy named Kyle Grillat, reporting for AFP. So I'm going to leave the fluff that comes out of this article out, but just realize that the 60% of Americans agree on every one of these things. Teachers should get more pay.
All right.
Between school shootings, the COVID-19 pandemic, LGBTQ policies, and controversies over race-based content taught in schools, U.S. teachers have been through a lot recently. And also, they're chronically underpaid. Most Americans are in favor of paying them more. In fact, 73% think teachers should be paid more.
Bleh. Making me sick. Quit your job if you don't like it. You're chronically underpaid. Oh no. You get a quarter of the year off. And also, quit abusing kids.
Well, I think a lot of people see the work that teachers put into the government education system and think that, this is actually a good idea to have good government education and good teachers.
I think people just say that. I think they know deep down inside exactly what they went through in the government indoctrination system, and they'll tell you to your face that, look, I went through it and I came out fine, but they didn't come out fine.
I think the average person doesn't think like that. I think the average person says,
their subconscious knows.
How do you know that though?
How could you ignore it?
I don't know how
you were abused for 15,000 hours of your childhood life.
They don't see that as abuse.
You're not going to recognize it?
Getting an education. I don't think a lot of people see that as abuse. You and I might see it as abuse and indoctrination at a government daycare prison, but the average person doesn't think like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, obviously they don't, because 73% of them think that teachers should be paid more. Now, first thing I would like to do is distinguish between a government school teacher, or what I like to call a bureaucrat, and a private school or homeschool co-op teacher, or even just a mom who teaches her own kids.
Mm-hmm. Big
in
distinction
the case
there, yes.
of, the latter, those people are paid what they're worth. A private school or charter school even that doesn't get enough students goes out of business, and the teachers don't get paid anything, or they go on to someplace else and get paid and whatever they need to get paid or whatever. But you're not forced to fund them. I want to talk about the government school teachers. Those are the ones I really have an axe to grind on, because they've decided for better or for worse, that it's easier to go into that system. And that system has major problems. They're not all focused on the teacher, but the government schools are heavy in administrators. The teachers are hard to fire, which means that, they don't have to be good teachers. They don't have to be bad teachers. Every teacher who's a government school teacher right now listening to me knows the facts that they've got people amongst them in their workforce that shouldn't be there, and they can't get rid of them, and they're not going anywhere. So I think the government school is funded through force and coercion. We're forced to pay at the pain of losing our house for the worst school in a given district, because that's just the truth. If you take each grade and compare it comparatively to each grade, and you take the district, compare the schools within the district, 95+% of the time, the government school is going to be the worst performing school in that set, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm very confident in saying that we're forced to fund the worst school in the district. And then if you want your kid to have a good education, you can send them to any place else in the district if you wish to, but you must pay for the worst option. That's what other business model would this survive in?
It sounds ridiculous when you say it like that.
Most places in America, I wouldn't say most places. Many places in America, we currently have school choice. You can take your kid and put him in a charter school. You can put him in a private school. You can homeschool him. You can do a variety of things. The government, in many cases, will give you some of your money that was extracted from you back. Not all of it, usually. In fact, I believe in no case will they give you all of your money back. But they'll give you some of your money, and then you can choose that school. And that's fundamentally had way better results than 100 years of forced funding of the worst school in a given district.
Yeah.
And so do I think teachers should be paid more? I think teachers should be paid what they're worth. I think a great teacher who can teach a lot of kids and teach them very well should be paid a lot. And I think a terrible teacher who can't teach anybody shouldn't be paid anything.
Yeah. I agree with that.
I would agree with that too, but I think the problem is a lot of people in America think that, our teachers not being paid enough, so we need to vote them more money into the education fund, not realizing that no one's managing the fund except the bureaucrats, and the bureaucrats always vote themselves more money.
And I have some solutions for that, Riley, because I don't know how to solve America's problems, but I do have some solutions for my individual listeners' problems. So, if you want your kid to go to school and you don't want to be forced to pay for government indoctrination centers that, fund that are the worst performing school in the given district, there's some solutions. You could pick up and move to New Hampshire, where we have school choice, and you will pay way less. And we're the only place in America that is sort of walking towards a more free market in schools. That might not be true. There are a few other states. I know Florida's doing really well, but Connecticut, which was a very free place to educate your kid, now is less so. And generally, government is growing in most other places, so I don't trust those other places, including Florida, as well as they may be doing in the recent past. But New Hampshire, I trust that it's going to get freer and freer over time there. Other options: live in a motorhome. Drive from place to place and boondock as much as possible. Live on a boat, another place that doesn't pay property taxes. Honestly, you could claim to some extent just renting that you don't pay property taxes. It's not exactly true, but it might make you feel better.
It's the same claim as that you don't pay sales tax. It's just taken from you. You know what I mean? It's just added to the charge.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
it's not like you have an option to tell the cashier, no, I'm not going to pay the sales tax part, just this other part. They won't give you the goods. So
yeah, I think that, but as a renter, you could. So to be clear, economics states, proper economic theory would state that the cost of the overhead for the producer is irrelevant to the price that the market will pay. So the market has a price, and the producer has an overhead, and those things are related, but they're not directly related.
That's correct.
In so much as if for whatever reason you had to pay, I don't know, $5,000 a month to have a unit that was prepared for somebody to rent, that doesn't mean that you're entitled to a rent of $5,300 a month, right, just because it costs you $5,000 a month to run it. You could just be a bad business person and have bought too high or whatever problem there might be. So it's kind of fair to say, yeah, the landlord pays the property tax. It's true, the landlord pays the property tax, but it's not directly related to the cost of the rent. I would call that a justification. I wouldn't call that a truth, but I can see the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go on to point number 2. There should be policies preventing landlords from increasing rent. A pandemic-era policy in 2020 prevented landlords from evicting tenants. After that policy expired, rent for many skyrocketed. Most Americans, 61%, either strongly or somewhat support policies that would prevent landlords from raising rent. So we went from schools, which are paid for by taxes, which landlords pay, to landlords increasing rent. And, most people, good people, I'm sure, kind people at the very least, if they're not good, kind people don't want to see people kicked out of their homes. But landlords, no one's protecting landlords from the cost of things going up. No one says, property taxes will not increase X. No one says that the Fed won't raise rates on home loans and, that drives the cost. No one says any of these things, but they say, yeah, renters can't be kicked out. Well, why should I take a risk as a landlord and be stuck holding the bag just because people feel bad for renters? I mean, a purchase is a relationship, and the government shouldn't be involved. As nice as people might feel, it's none of their gosh darned business what I do and what arrangement I make with my landlord. None of your business. I want the services I want, and I don't want you intervening. Thanks.
That's right. I like having a place to rent, and if you stop landlords from setting their own prices, there pretty soon won't be any places to rent, because who would go into a business that's going to cost them money to do?
I think the reason why a lot of people see the landlords as the horrible people is because they're the one raising the prices, when in reality, they don't see the hidden costs of taxes and things like that.
Rents are too high, but it's not directly attributable to the landlords. They're just charging what they have to make it a feasible business model. Give us a call. Let us know what you think about that. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join today.
From Feature Story News in Brussels, I'm William Denslow. The United States has delayed a threat to attack Iran's energy infrastructure to April 6th. The US President said the deadline extension request came from Tehran, though that's not yet been confirmed by Iran. Donald Trump added that talks were going very well, But Iran's leadership says the peace proposal floated by the US was excessive and unfair. Ross Cullen reports from the Turkish city of Van, near the Iran border.
It's understood that back-channel talks are being held between Washington and Tehran, with various countries involved in conveying messages back and forth. According to reports in the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump is considering sending another 10,000 ground troops to the Middle East ahead of a possible incursion into Iran.
India is cutting taxes on petrol and diesel as concerns mount over a hike in fuel prices due to the war in West Asia. The cut could help oil-selling companies recoup some of their heightened costs due to supply disruptions, and if passed on, could also help consumers save more money. Ishan Garg tells us more from New Delhi.
The Indian government has cut down excise duty on petrol and diesel by roughly 10% each, but it's unclear if that benefit will actually reach the common public. Analysts say it will help oil companies, most of which are government-owned, manage their costs. Concerns about fuel inflation have been looming since the war in Gulf started a month ago. India relies on imported fuel for about 80% of its needs, and the country is preparing for the long haul, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi warning of hard times ahead if the conflict drags on. He's holding a meeting with the chiefs of Indian states on Friday with an eye on managing fuel supplies.
Pakistan's aviation sectors incurred losses of around $72 million as airspace disruptions linked to the Iran war continue to ripple across the region. Hundreds of flights to Middle Eastern countries are being cancelled each day, affecting passengers and businesses reliant on regional connectivity. Hira Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
Pakistani officials say flights to Dubai, Doha, Abu Dhabi, Muscat and Sharjah have been severely disrupted amid the ongoing regional crisis. They warn the situation is taking a toll on passengers and dealing a heavy blow to the aviation sector. Pakistan's national carrier, PIA, has cancelled more than 500 flights so far. Flights that are still operating are being forced to take longer routes, driving up fuel consumption and insurance costs linked to war risk exposure.
And US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is joining G7 counterparts in France for talks on the conflict in Iran and the war in Ukraine. The UK is among several powers expressing concerns over Moscow allegedly sharing intelligence with Tehran to help them target US forces. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Give us a call. Let us know what's on your mind tonight. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. Are you tired of the oppressive rules and moderation of the big tech social media sites? Our Mastodon server at social.freetalklive.com can set you free. Mastodon is free, open source, decentralized, and federated. Multiple apps are available for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and Linux. Social.freetalklive.com. In the studio tonight, it's Stu.
Riley O'Bell.
and Mark Edge.
Yes, Mark Edge is joining us via Jitsi call tonight. We have callers on the line, so we're going to do that right now. Going to a call from Bartertown. You're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Stu, for accepting our phone call tonight. I am one of the hosts at Bartertown, and I just wanted to remind the listeners that we're having an event in May called Mayfest. That's one of the things. And I'm also, of course, happy to discuss anything on you guys' mind or that's relevant that might be up my alley to give any sort of opinion on. But yeah, so Mayfest, I'll just keep going until you want to discuss anything else. But Mayfest is from May 1st through whenever people decide to leave. And we're just asking for a contribution for vehicles that park, and then however many people want to ride or carpool or bicycle or however they get out can camp for free in the woods at Bartertown, which is kind of isolated. It's very remote, and we're going to be offering complimentary services such as the toilet, hot showers, and we'll have meals that we'll be preparing every night so people can come together and share meals if you want to. And it's pretty much a radically free environment. Sorry, Stu, you have something to say?
Yeah, what is the landmark that's closest to Bartertown that I might find the location of this?
Well, Spectacle Pond, which is near Canaan, New Hampshire.
You presume I can spell spectacle pond?
Yeah, it's the traditional spelling for spectacle, I believe.
Again, once the assumption, this is in Maine, right?
No, it's in Grafton County, New Hampshire. So Spectacle Pond of Grafton County, New Hampshire, near Canaan, New Hampshire. Canaan is Canaan. And there's a Facebook event for it. If people are able to search on Facebook for Porkfest Classic is the name we're going by, but it also Mayfest is part of the title also there, since it is the more traditional Porkfest rule set of the Shire Society Declaration, which is essentially voluntarism. And a lot of you guys should know about the Shire Society Declaration, the most minimal rule set in writing as voluntarists that we can use to kind of guide our interactions among each other and among others, so that we can kind of lead by example and promote a single solid written rule set as the guiding principles for society to follow.
So, knowing a little bit about Bartertown that I do, this is a clothing optional event?
Correct. So, the Shire Society rule set does not allow for pushing clothing obligations onto others.
I do love that. So all of the month of May, right?
That's correct. The first week, so the May 1st, or May Day as some people call it, there's going to be a full moon on May 1st. So that's going to be our kickoff event.
It's a perfect perfect reason to have a party, right?
A full moon, warmer weather.
Well, it's New Hampshire,
That's
and
true. That's true.
Getting close to the notches. There'll still probably be some snow.
Yeah, warm for
Bartertown,
us.
thanks for the call.
Yeah, thanks for the call. That should be a good time. Space may be limited, so reach out to Bartertown to coordinate with him.
See a bunch of New Hampshire people naked.
Yep.
I'm sure that'll make people happy.
Sure, some of them will be clothed. Some of them maybe not.
Some of them will.
Being without clothes is nice sometimes. If you want to try that around other people, this is the event for you.
Yeah.
We're going to go to our next caller. We've got Sarah in New Mexico. Sarah, what's on your mind tonight?
I went to the No King protest yesterday here in Albuquerque.
They're still doing those?
Yeah, they had one, like 3,000 of them all across the country. And it was a huge, over 1,500 people showed up.
Who is the king they're trying to protest?
They don't like Charles? Or
they call it the Pindejo Paleto. We got one of those little paletos, ice cream box. But anyway, the little things. But it's Trump people. We don't like the war. We don't like the airlines. I don't like how, and then all of our prices is going to be even worse. But it was a lot of fun because they blocked off. I've never seen San Mateo or Montgomery big Artillery Street blocked off for 2 hours. So that was just exciting. So
just a bunch of people walking around with signs and whatever. There was no violence.
What do you think about the
happening?
branding "No Kings," Sarah? I mean, could they just have just as easily have called it, the Democratic Party of Albuquerque? I mean, what do you think?
Well, they have to have something like a jingle, that's catchy. I mean, They made a lot of jokes about him, and it was really hilarious as a speakers. But anyway, the most exciting thing I found was that I found people with a socialist with the red shirt playing drums, and they were definitely a communist party that was part of organizing all these protests, and I think these might have been the people with sickle and hammer at the UNAM table. I mean, it has to be the same bunch affiliated. You know what I mean? Because one of the guys had the labor union for the representing the UNAM workers, and he was part of the Socialist Party. So I thought that was the most thrilling thing. I knew we had communists here in Albuquerque, and you find them in the protest.
I'm sure that's the case.
I'm sure there are communists everywhere.
I like the name No Kings. I think it's a really great brand. And what I mostly look forward to is the next few months when there's just a whole bunch of anti-war rhetoric going on. And maybe that'll even last for a little while. I remember when George Bush was president, the Democrats were very principled about no war. When Obama came around, they wanted to give him a peace prize, and then he fired more cruise missiles than every other peace prize winner combined.
Exactly.
And,
the biggest drone bombing president in the history of America.
Yeah.
Until Trump came along.
To show that they have no real care about kings and authoritarianism, but really they're just, party line kind of people. But nonetheless, it'll be really great in the future when we do have a Democratic president, and I am confident that we will. Then we can just go back and say, hey, I thought y'all said no kings. And then, you bring out this authoritarian.
Well, you know what? He might get impeached. How much do we need in the Senate? Once we went over the Senate's Democrat, he's going to get impeached.
That is a true statement. That is a true statement. Absolutely, Sarah. That it's about 50-50 right now. For maybe 51-49, Trump loses out on the Senate. It could happen, really could happen. And, often the midterms go against the seated president.
I don't think he's that worried about it because senators are for sale. You just buy the votes you need, and there's plenty of money for that.
How about this though, Sarah? What do you think do you think the next president is going to be worse than Trump? Because it seems like they've gotten, progressively things have gotten sort of worse and worse, don't you think?
Well, I think our inflation and our prices is going to be even worse. People complain about we're paying too much for, and then you know what? Trump gets in all the oil. They can't get any deliveries, so everything's even like 3 times more prices. He screwed it up even worse. You complain about inflation, now it's even worse because you have to go around the straits, and there's going to be another thing. All the airplane has to spend more gasoline, and you can't deliver products. You can't go traveling, so everything's going to be even more pricier. So you got
is that yes?
Even worse.
Is that a yes? The next president will be worse than Trump? Or no, I think we'll get a slight reprieve, but he'll be worse than Biden?
Well, I think anything's going to be better than Trump. He's like the ultra left.
I think that's what Democrats think, yes. So what do you think about, you would agree, though, that Clinton and Obama were pretty good, right? But Joe Biden, not as good, right?
I think he was better than Trump, the ultra-right.
I didn't ask that question. Let's not be evasive. You're not
compared
a politician.
To Obama,
you're not running for office.
Obama and Clinton.
Yeah. Was Biden worse than Obama and Clinton?
I think they're all about the same. They're all about the same. I haven't really noticed much difference, except that, but I just don't like all this food stamp. They're going to make everybody to work. All of our food bank has been just run dry.
What's wrong with working while you have food stamps?
Well, think about it. They're mentally ill. Why do you think they're homeless and starving?
I don't believe in mental illness.
Regardless of them being mentally ill, that does not prevent them from working, Sarah.
They should fix their mental illness. It's just your brain. Just master your brain. Tell it to do what you want it to do instead.
Well, for some reason, once we put all the restriction, all the food banks got run out of food. Everybody was going to it because they can't do the requirement. I don't know, but it's easy for you to say. But these people.
Why is it easy for me to say? I've used food banks. I've been that poor.
Well, yeah. So for some reason, he put restricted. They did all this stuff that's coming down from Trump, and everybody has to go to food banks, and nobody has the money to give to them to add to it.
Sarah, are you more concerned about the price of goods and oil than you are about, say, civilian deaths from missile launches? Because that's really what concerns me about the war and about President Trump is him condoning
that's
all of the killing that's going on, which is unacceptable and must stop.
And the whole thing in America is like all you care about is American troops getting killed. No, you're concerned about all lives being killed. You have to Iraqi our brothers and sisters. They're human beings. You have to worry about hurting them too, causing chaos. You are right. But of course, that's one reason to oppose the war.
I'm against the next war too.
Me too.
Yep.
Thanks for the call, Sarah.
Thanks for the call. We have yet another caller on the line. Busy night. We're going to go to Turd Ferguson in Pennsylvania. Turd, what's on your mind tonight?
Sarah's partisan hackery truly makes me sick. I really believe that she is the single worst caller of Free Talk Live.
You don't think I made her entertaining?
I don't think it's nothing against you, Mark.
No. I'm literally asking. I say the same thing to myself when this kind of thing happens. It's my job to make Sarah as entertaining as possible to whomever's listening, and it's hard to know these days because Free Talk Live's not on as many radio stations, right? So there's not as many uninitiated listeners. It's kind of the people who've been listening to her for the last 15 years or however long it's been.
Personally, some of the Sarah calls have gotten the best laughs out of me from all of Free Talk Live
She definitely
history.
is really entertaining at times.
No, she's not. You're giving her way too much credit. And Mark Edge, as you know, I really like you, but nobody can make Sarah entertaining, no matter how talented they are at their radio job.
She is
pretty. I think your opinion is as valid as the next guy's, Turd. I really appreciate it.
She is pretty dull.
I think my opinion's even more valid than the next guy's. And that's because,
you'd admit that this is a subjective situation, right?
I disagree. I think this is an objective situation.
She is objectively bad.
The greatest. I am the greatest caller of Free Talk Live of all time, with the exception of perhaps maybe James Whittakind.
Have you been?
Who I think?
Have you been hanging out with Skeeter?
Please don't say his name and get him to call.
Well,
by the way, I have a restraining order against him, and it is illegal for him to call. Not that happens.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Well, he called a few weeks ago, and I was able to get on the air with him briefly.
If I wasn't on the air, then I guess he can call.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've had some great conversations with James Whittakind off the air on the phone. I actually think he's a pretty funny guy. He's highly entertaining.
I think that he can be clever at times. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. So the reason why I'm calling is because I personally believe that the Free State Project has basically 20 years in has completely failed at what set out to attempt to do in the first place. What
is that?
To create a free society, a voluntary society. And so
kind of, I mean, so there, let me be clear. I've had this, interview with Jason Sorens, and I think you can critique the Free State Project, and I'm willing to do so. But really what he said was, what would happen if we took half of the libertarians from the Libertarian Party, like, there apparently were about 40,000 people who were members of the Libertarian Party at the time in like 2002 or whatever. What if we took half of them and we got them to move to one state? And that's more of a question than it is an answer. And I think that the answer to the question is, wow, there will be a lot of problems, and there have been. They will be more effective than the National Libertarian Party. And I think it is.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, Angela McArdle seems to have single-handedly gotten more done for the libertarian movement than the Free State Project. It certainly seems like that. Now, this might be something that is more subjective than objective, but I got to tell you, I moved out of New Hampshire. I think it was probably 7 years ago now, maybe, because I was just so tired of dealing with the nonsense, and I felt like this thing was going nowhere. And I was still considered an early mover, honestly. I think I moved just before the move was triggered. And all the people that signed up had a 5-year window per their contract to move there. And I'm not even sure if they've come anywhere close to the number of people that signed up. And look, I'm not knocking it, okay? I mean, if you like the Free State Project, good for you. But my suggestion is that why not instead, and I know this has been tried before unsuccessfully, but it might be a better idea now that many of you, I mean, at least a good chunk of you are in the state, go ahead and move to Grafton and just vote out the politicians in Grafton, and you might actually get what you want. Or not exactly, but something close to it. You might be able to create a little autonomous zone in Grafton, and you might be able to secede. I don't know if this has ever been tried, but you might be able to say, look, we're creating our own little constitution in Grafton that says that we don't have to be part of the state of New Hampshire or the federal government, because we are the government. And what we say goes, because we have a monopoly on the use of force in Grafton. And so I think that's your best bet at this point, because I don't really see the Free State Project from a state perspective going anywhere. I don't think it's going to work. And you guys have had 20 years. It's been 20 years.
I hear you. I don't think it's going to create a free society if you want to be very pedantic about what the term free means, but I kind of do think that it has been, somewhat successful. And I honestly believe that moving to one area together, or sort of the free town concept, is counterproductive. And here's why.
I think it's a great idea.
I hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
Currently, 160 plus, I think it's 166. It's either 160 or 166. And again, I don't have the numbers in front of me. Of the New Hampshire representatives are rated 80% and above. So that means they're pro-liberty, like an 80-80 libertarian, as opposed to 100-100 libertarian. And that's a pretty good number. That 160 means sort of the libertarians have a libertarian veto. You can't get your bill through without getting, one of three parties on side: the traditional Republicans, the traditional Democrats, and then the sort of libertarians hiding as something else. And if you get two of those three, you'll get your bill passed. And if you get, and of course, to get the libertarians on board, you probably have to have a pretty pro-freedom bill. And so I like that. I think that that's a very powerful thing. If you move 500 libertarians to one town and they get one representative, then you have one vote in the New Hampshire House. If you take 500 libertarians and move them to 500 different locations spread across New Hampshire, you have potentially a potential candidate in every race, and that candidate could, win or lose, and has the chance of being somewhere around, let's see, there's, it's hard for a libertarian to hide as a Democrat. The Democrats have been very good at ferreting them out. Of course, they've stayed a minority for the vast majority of the time since the Free State Project's been here. The Republicans consider them Confederates and on the same side. So they'll, let's say, they could potentially win another 40 seats from the 160 that are already there. I'm presuming that libertarians that move to the 160 locations of these current reps are smart enough not to primary them.
Well, maybe, but here the problem is that many of the people that even once liked the Free Staters and once liked the Libertarians now hate them, and I think a lot actually is always a more accurate estimate. A lot of them hate them because of, quite frankly, the free keeners, as they used to be colloquially referred to as. And I'm not saying that everything's fine elsewhere, because I think there are still a lot of people that hate the Free Staters in other places. But I think Keene is probably the Libertarians in Keene are probably the most hated out of all of them. But if you just forget about it and you just get to 3,000 or so, my sense is there's probably about 3,000 still left in New Hampshire. Maybe there's more. Maybe there's, I don't know. My sense is it's probably about 3. You can go to Grafton right now, and you can outnumber everybody else in Grafton. You don't even need math, really. I mean, you could just go there, and you can do it in a year. I mean, and then there's no questions. There's no like, well, what if? Well, like maybe, what if we had one free stater running in every election? There'd be none of that. Like tomorrow, you could do what you want to do, and it's so simple and it's so easy.
I support anybody's ideas that they feel are going to make them freer. Here's what I caution. Plans that make you less free, that you hope will make the world freer and thus you happy. The sacrifice. Right. I'm kind of an objectivist, a Randian in this sense, is that I think when you try to, when you try to free the world doesn't want to be freed. Ian Freeman's sitting in prison right now because people did not understand what he was trying to do by selling Bitcoin. You know, some little old ladies got scammed by Nigerian princes, and they somehow blamed Ian Freeman for it because they bought it from him. Now, those same little old ladies could have gone to Target and bought gift cards. They could have gone to Walmart and done the same. They could have gone to Coinbase and bought Bitcoin.
And the CEO of Target and Coinbase aren't going to be on the witness stands.
Yeah, they're absolutely not. But Ian Freeman's got to sit in prison. So, I caution when it comes to sort of doing something that doesn't make you happy. If you're excited about moving to the Free State Project, I encourage you. If you're excited about moving to Grafton for the Free Town Project, again, I encourage you. If you're excited about moving to New Hampshire and running for office, I would encourage you to find what we call a swing district and move there. And, just do what makes you happiest is my biggest advice when it comes to liberty.
Well, thanks for the call tonight, Turd. You can get your thoughts and ideas on the air. 603-283-6160. What do you think is the Free State Project route a good idea, or the Free Town? Is that better? This is Free Talk Live.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone? You forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection. You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann with the Week in Review. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Friday that the US can achieve its objectives in Iran without needing to send in American ground troops. Diplomatic efforts to end the conflict are continuing, but Rubio has suggested there was still no direct communications. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
A new timeline for this US operation in Iran now coming from the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, saying that operations would conclude at the appropriate time, but it would be weeks, not months. He said that negotiations had not begun in earnest, but that the US had exchanged messages with Iran and received indications from the Iranians about a willingness to talk. And still in the background is the possibility of US boots on the ground. Rubio, though, said that the US could achieve its goals in Iran without any ground troops.
That came after the US delayed a threat to attack Iran's energy infrastructure to the 6th of April. The US president said the deadline extension request came from Tehran. Donald Trump added that talks were going very well, but Iran's leadership says the peace proposal floated by Washington was excessive and unfair. Ross Cullen reports from the Turkish city of Van near the Iran border.
Iran has not confirmed publicly that it is in direct negotiations with the United States, but it's understood that back-channel talks are being held between Washington and Tehran, with various countries involved in conveying messages back and forth, including Egypt, Pakistan and Turkey. According to reports in the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump is considering sending another 10,000 ground troops to the Middle East ahead of a possible incursion into Iran, on top of the more than 3,000 soldiers already on their way to the Gulf.
A report from the OECD predicts the UK economy will be hit harder than any other industrialised nation due to the conflict in the Middle East, with inflation expected to spike and the jobs market weaken. Stuart Smith has more from London.
Goods and services are likely to get much more expensive much more quickly as the US and Israeli war with Iran drags on, and the United Kingdom is going to be particularly hard hit according to the OECD's analysis. Inflation was predicted to be 2.5% this year, but is now forecast to be 4%. That will impact UK growth more than similar nations like Italy, France and Germany, who analysts say are less exposed to energy shocks. For London, that means a predicted 40% decrease in annual growth this year, even if oil and commodity prices stabilise by summer. The think tank claims efforts to increase domestic energy use and rely less on imported fuels should help. The UK government says it's already doing that, but opposition parties claim the disproportionate impact of the war on the British economy is evidence that the government's policies aren't working.
The International Olympic Committee this week banned transgender women from Olympic competition, saying the new policy promotes fairness. The eligibility change comes after US President Donald Trump signed an executive order last year banning transgender girls and women from competing in female sports ahead of the 2028 Los Angeles Summer Games. Tony Waterman reports.
Under the new policy, only biological females will be allowed to compete in the Olympics starting in 2028. Their sex will be determined by a mandatory one-time genetic test. IOC President Kirsty Coventry said the decision was based on science, which she says shows males have a performance advantage in sports that rely on strength, power, and endurance.
At the Olympic Games, even the smallest margins can be the difference between victory and defeat. So it's absolutely clear that it would not be fair for biological males to compete in the female category.
It's unclear how many, if any, athletes may be impacted. The IOC says these individuals would still be eligible to compete in the male competitions.
And finally, there was some good news this week. An endangered mountain gorilla has given birth to twins in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Conservationists say twin births are very rare in mountain gorillas. Chris Ochimaringa has more from Kinshasa.
Park rangers at the Virunga National Park found a gorilla nursing twins deep in the dense rainforest in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The female gorilla from the Baraka family delivered a female and a male baby. Experts say twins are extremely rare in mountain gorillas, accounting for less than 1% of births. Park rangers are monitoring them to ensure they grow into adults. The Virunga National Park is a very dangerous place for wild animals and park rangers because many rebels and poachers operate in the area. The twins' birth comes 2 months after another gorilla delivered twins.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann, and that was the Week in Review.
Americans everywhere are enjoying their Sundays after successfully completing Mother's Day in less than 20 minutes this morning. Dads were able to wrap up breakfast in bed by 9:18 a.m., giving them plenty of time to mill about the garage for the rest of the afternoon. While children who spent a minute and a half this morning hugging their mothers are currently out playing street hockey. And after completely fulfilling their Mother's Day obligations with a store-bought card, teens are now free to leave and spend the day with their friends. The moms, who were quickly and efficiently lavished with cards, flowers, assurances of love, and 7 full minutes of family togetherness, praised the competency with which the holiday was carried out.
Oh, it was great. Charles and the kids made me feel completely appreciated, but they ended the holiday before I even got out of bed. Guess I'll go water the plants now.
But before the day-long celebration concluded early this morning, moms had their own job to do, making a brief, obligatory phone call to their own mothers.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. It's talk radio you control. You can get your thoughts and ideas on the air by calling 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny, liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. And in the studio tonight, it's Stu,
Riley O'Bill,
and Mark Edge.
Riley's got his hoodie on from LibertyMinded.com.
It's true, I do.
Good looking hoodie there. Let's see. We are going to go to the phones. We got a caller from Las Vegas, Nevada. You're on the air. What's on your mind?
Lowering government spending and deficits isn't the path to freedom. It's the path to saving democracy. And nobody wants freedom. They want flourishing. Being burdened with choice isn't something people want. And oh my God, Mark, you're an objectivist?
No, I lean objectivist in that way. But I think you are right. I don't think that most people care anything about liberty. I think they do care about flourishing, and they care about, basically just how well their lives are going. And they want them, I think, to add a finer point to it, if I may, they want their lives to get marginally a little better every year. And if it does, they're pretty happy. But what would you say to this, Skeeter? Is that I've heard a statistic that 80%, that's 80, just in case you might have heard differently, 80% of people in the world are dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with their government. What do you think about that?
Well, what they say and what they do kind of contradict each other. If you're really dissatisfied, you'd leave, right? Right, Mark?
And go where? To one of the other percent of places where people are dissatisfied with our government?
Seastead. Like, your options are limited to based upon technology and what other people believe, right? So
Sure.
Obviously they're selecting the best possible choice that they feel that is available to them. So being dissatisfied kind of loses all meaning to that when you explain it that way, right? But isn't that what I want to talk about?
Well, hold on. We're talking about this now. I think you're right. Again, I am conceding this ground, but I also think that it takes a little time for ideas to become sort of cemented in people's minds. At this point, I think many libertarians understand if they wanted to live a more libertarian life, they can move to New Hampshire. But they may be, for whatever reason, it's like mom's sick and old and I don't want to go yet, or I got to retire, or the kids are still in the house, or whatever the reason might be. I think that it's valid to sort of wait. But further, I don't think many people have heard about Prospera.hn or Morazan.city, or really that even a Seastead I don't think a Seastead is a practical choice if you want freedom. yes, if you want to sort of test out seasteads and stuff, but not if you want to move outside of the sort of 12-mile international boundary.
No, you'll make yourself a larger target for coercion by doing that.
I think you'll get swamped.
I mean, what is Prospera and Morazan, right? Other than crypto colonization of 4 countries, right? You guys, those societies are just role playing. They're LARPing. They're LARPing freedom when they're actually using their privilege as a U.S. corporation to take advantage of poor countries, right? They use their wealth that they accumulated under a democracy and pretend they're independent from it when they're reliant on their legal system in order to get their bargaining power to get their stupid rich city, right? Morazan
that might be true. What you're saying, it sounds like you're attacking Prospera and throwing Morazan under the bus. I mean, none of the things you said about Morazan are true.
Do they rely on taxation?
They are forced.
Do they have open borders? Do they?
Hold on. The laws of the Zetes require them to give a less than 1% income tax, and people are sort of supposed to voluntarily participate.
Did everyone there renounce their citizenship?
Why would they do that? That's not an obligation.
Yeah, but why aren't they doing it? At least the ANCAPs who moved there, who claim that they're independent of the U.S. government.
You're confused. Right? You don't know that much about Morazan. Fine, no problem. Morazan is a housing development for factory workers in Choloma, Honduras, one of the really most inhospitable urban places in the world. It's not for.
I was referring to Prospera more than. I was referring to Prospera more than Morazan, but both are still. Is it run by a U.S. company, a corporation?
Nope.
No. Is it under?
It's run by Honduran Corporation. And the vast majority of people who live in it are Honduran, and they want to live there and they love it. They have a waiting list.
They have a waiting list, so it's not open borders.
Well, why would it have open borders?
Oh, no, you're just criticizing anarcho-capitalist theory, right? They always advocate for open borders and stuff.
I get it, but you do understand, I'm sure, Skeeter. You're well-informed. Not every one of our listeners are. You're well-informed on this stuff, but you know as well as I do that this is a controversial issue within libertarian circles as to whether or not open borders are a good idea. I believe that when you... I fundamentally believe that whatever organization owns the land gets to make the choices of what the immigration policy is. I just believe that we've been lied to in the United States when they say the government is of the people, by the people, and for the people, and that somehow we are the government. That I think the government is
how's that a lie?
And they own all the land.
I don't understand how that's a lie. Theoretically, we can dissolve democracy if you get enough support for it.
Sure,
you would have to get.
But it's not me,
all of the
right?
States for it. The problem
if I decided I wanted to dissolve democracy, I can't do it, right?
Yeah, but you don't make up the entire group. You don't make up the entire ownership of the country.
Sure, this is the fiction of groups, though. Like it's the fiction. Like this is what they tell you. You are the government. Well, I'm not. I'm 1/300 millionth of the government, and that my vote doesn't matter unless it's a tie break, and it will never be a tie break my entire life.
No, that's a false way to look at it. You can always everybody. I mean, you can keep removing people from the vote. I mean, you can keep removing someone's vote from the system, and eventually it'll change. It doesn't matter who it is, right? Your vote, you're just sour that the majority doesn't agree with you, right?
Of course it doesn't. I'm fully aware of that, Skeeter. That's why I picked up and I moved to New Hampshire, and then I picked up from there and I moved to Saipan, and then I picked up from there and I moved to Honduras. And, by the way, I keep a residence in New Hampshire because U.S. citizens must have a residence, and even if they're a foreign resident.
The reason why people believe in this system is because it has worked relatively well. Right? We
compared to other forms of tyranny, it is good. But you would also agree, I'm sure, that government loves to retain power, right? Like it just doesn't want to let it go. So the idea that you could buy your own little piece of land and buy the sovereignty thereof and run your own little country.
It's not up to them. It's really not up to them, right? It's up to their performance, at least their relative performance, right? If you were to accelerate the fiscal collapse, you would see change. People would want change, like in Argentina. What do you think created Bitcoin, Mark?
It was the banking crisis of 2008.
Yeah. It's these things that prompt people, that urge people to want change.
When this is a valid theory.
Like it works. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. When things look like they're working well, they don't want change. It's not that they're slaves or that they're under an illusion, Riley.
They are under an illusion.
Ladies and gentlemen, vote for the worst possible candidate. Skeeter says so. Thank you for the call.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call tonight, Skeeter. That guy's got some interesting logic, hasn't he?
Well, he's one of those guys that I say is like so intelligent he might be crazy. He's also a complete ass.
Yes.
And it makes him unlistenable to the average person. But as a caller, I think there's a good argument that Skeeter's a good caller.
Yeah, I wish he could make his thoughts a little more coherent, but you could tell there's some substance there.
It makes you look good when he's not coherent.
All right, we're going to go to Tom in New Hampshire. Tom, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Good evening. First of all, I believe the Declaration of Independence talks about when things are pretty much going well, where it says, and I quote, "Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed." End of quote. So,
yeah,
I mean, things are going. It just amazes me that most voters don't give a flying duck about all the people getting killed in Iran or the major misappropriation of our tax revenues and the military force of the United States to prop up a foreign country's scriptural claim to a plot of territory out in the Middle East, which is what it's all about. Instead of simply telling all these Jewish people, look, next time there's a terrible thing going on, why don't you just all move to the United States? They should have just suffered them all to move to the United States.
I kind of think that. I kind of do think that, though. Is this like, I mean, that really many of the problems in the Middle East are Britain's, and then to some extent the United States' fault. Had FDR welcomed the ship of the damned, these Jews who were trying to escape Nazi Germany in, I think, 1939, and said, you know what, all you Jews come here, that things might have been better for the United States. Yeah. We'd have all those Nobel Peace Prizes and all that stuff. And it wouldn't be such a big deal in Israel right now.
The other part of it is, though, I mean, they don't care about the carnage. They don't care about the human rights violations or the international law violations going on. They say, oh, but the price of oil is going up. Oh, no, we'll vote out these no good Republicans over something stupid like that. And they don't give a flying duck about the real issues there because it's somebody else's problem. And they didn't mind when the United States was fighting a war for oil in Iraq. It's just, it was started just so Vice President Cheney's friends at Halliburton could make money off the oil. But it's, the price of oil is going up. And, they're going to vote out the Republicans over that. They're over-dependent on oil, granted. But it's got to stop because, these people are getting bombed, and look at the attack in Venezuela where scores of security forces were wounded and killed to kidnap the president and vice president of Venezuela over what? Oh, we don't like those. I mean, so these people were importing cocaine into the United States. And I tell you, cocaine how much worse it is than legal drugs like alcohol. I mean, if you drink alcohol over time, you can get addicted to it. But if you do cocaine over time, you can get addicted to it. So that's the first way that cocaine is so much worse. Another way is if you drink alcohol, you drink too much at one time, it can kill you. But if you do too much cocaine at one time, it can kill you. And that's the second way that cocaine is worse than alcohol. And the third way is if you drink alcohol and try to drive a car, you could crash and kill somebody else. But if you do cocaine and try to drive a car, you might crash and kill somebody else. So those are the three ways that cocaine is so much worse than alcohol.
They did a study at one point, and I can't state it off the top of my head, but it was something like, what are the negative social effects of all the drugs? And they included alcohol, and it was the worst. It has more negative social effects by dint of the fact that it is just consumed on a wide basis than all the rest of those drugs.
Well, it's one of the most dangerous too. It's one of the few that can kill you simply from the withdrawal.
It's true.
You start messing around with marijuana in college. I mean, you know what that stuff does to you? You start messing around with marijuana in college, you might grow up to be vice president of the United States.
Or president, for that matter.
Al Gore, he smoked weed and admitted to it and everything. Bill Clinton didn't inhale, supposedly, but it's
pot waster.
When you
George Bush did.
Do you realize what that can do to you? Well, yeah, if you mess around with marijuana in college, you might grow up to be vice president of the United States. It's like, I put that on some politicians. I was holding a news conference on January 3rd, 2001 in the Legislative Office Building in Concord during my brief time as a state representative, and I was holding a news conference, and they started, but these state representatives decided to start asking questions and confronting me on my positions and stuff. And one of them was saying, "Do you realize what that drugs do to you?" And I answered, "Yeah, you start messing around with marijuana in college, you might grow up to be vice president of the United States."
It's an excellent joke. Thank you for the call, Tom.
Yep, thanks for the call tonight.
I just looked up Polymarket on who will win the Senate in 2026, and currently it's a 52%, the slightest of margins for the Democrats. And as Sarah said earlier, and she isn't wrong, if the Democrats manage to get the Senate, then Trump will be impeached. Mm-hmm. And I believe that means convicted also, if the House and Senate, he's going down. So I suspect, it's just a supposition, that he will try very, very hard to prevent that from happening.
What do you think they'll take him down for? Certainly not the war crimes, something
what
much
difference
less.
does it make? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is all they have.
Well, because then they have to admit that America did war crimes.
Yeah, well, I won't even speculate. Polymarket would probably has, but
Polymarket's pretty good.
If the thing is there's enough things out there to convict someone of that they will definitely find something, and that's that. I'm not saying Trump's innocent. I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm saying that if the Senate is taken by the Democrats, they will impeach Trump.
I doubt there's been a president that hasn't done illegal things that could get them impeached since, before the Federal Reserve, certainly.
It wouldn't matter if they impeached him for wearing pink on Sunday.
Right.
They all they need is the votes. It doesn't matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go on with the things that Americans agree on. Up to 60%. Spending on public housing should increase. With rent and mortgages increasing, along with homelessness, more people are turning to public housing, which is provided and paid for by the government, which, by the way, is a nice euphemism for saying you and your taxes taken at the point of a gun if necessary. And believe it or not, 60% of Americans support increasing spending on public housing.
That's insane.
Yeah. Why is that?
because that's not sustainable. You're giving people the wrong incentive.
Yeah.
Well, most people don't.
I'm all for helping people out, but if you just give it to them unconditionally, guess what? They're going to keep using it.
Most people wrongly think that, when government does something, it's actually really good, but they forget that public housing is public housing, and that's where the drug addicts go. That's where the poor people end up, and there's no incentive for the poor people and the drug addicts to maintain the value of that property. It just becomes trash.
Yeah, they just trash it in many cases. Some people, I'm sure, try very hard to keep their houses very nice there, but the difficulty is that they're in the minority, or even it just takes one in a neighborhood to bring everything down.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not a solution. You're absolutely right. It creates the wrong incentives. And whether people believe that people are good or whether people believe that people are bad, I think that everybody can agree that people respond to incentives.
Yep.
That they respond very, very well to incentives. And the incentive, when you give somebody free housing, isn't necessarily to take care of the housing. It's just to, make as much money as you need to make in order to get by and make sure you don't lose that free housing.
Yeah, that's right. People will purposely make less money just so they can keep their benefits, free housing or food stamps or whatever they got going. And that's,
I think it's better to take the exact opposite approach and use that temporarily. Like, if I were to go on government assistance, I don't want to be having that hang over my head all the time because, number one, it doesn't incentivize me to produce. And number two, if I work just to maintain my benefits or don't work at all, then what's to incentivize me to save up for a house? What's to incentivize me to improve my life?
Yeah, it's a difficult conundrum, but remember, we are just a savanna ape that is carrying around a cell phone in his pocket, right? We're not all logical. Logic isn't the best system for convincing people of much of anything. It all comes down to sort of feelings.
Yeah, people are very emotionally reactive.
And group cohesion, I think, is the number one thing. If, most, what is the percentage? Most people will, they did some kind of study, right? And they said patently ridiculous things like this line is longer than that line when it obviously was not, right? And they got 80-something% of people to say at some point to agree with the obvious lie. And they got 15% of people to always agree with it. 15% of people would agree with an obvious lie in order to what? Well, it's because, why would they do that? The answer is because social cohesion is way more important to this particular species of primate than the truth is. Truth is relevant to about 15% of you autists out there, and the rest of people will just kind of fall in line.
Yeah, I kind of fall in that smaller category.
Yeah. I'd like to think I do.
Let's
go on. Oh, I've got, when we get back here, I've got the next one. Social welfare programs are fine. You could almost have guessed it.
Yeah, indeed. Give us a call. Let us know what you think. Are social welfare programs fine? Which of these items do you agree with? Apparently 60% of Americans do. Phone number here is 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Retail giant CVS is gearing up for floods of customers seeking the perfect meaningless piece of crap for their office gift swap. The company is making no secret that when it comes to wasting the obligatory $20 on a useless electronic dartboard or pretzel maker for someone you couldn't care less about, CVS is your best option.
Our incredible selection of worthless shit is just the thing that nobody wants. We guarantee you'll find nothing personal or unique in our store.
The company is offering massive discounts on otherwise unsellable items for holiday parties you don't even want to go to, like the $12 decorative lantern, which is expected to be a big hit with customers who grab the first thing they see when they walk in the store.
I really wanted to get something that said, I don't care about any of you people and I didn't put any effort into this.
CVS also has Hanukkah gifts for coworkers who you think might be Jewish, like candles and those little plastic net bags full of chocolate money.
This is the Onion News Network.
From Feature Story News in Brussels, I'm William Dunslow. The United States has delayed a threat to attack Iran's energy infrastructure to April 6th. The US President said the deadline extension request came from Tehran, though that's not yet been confirmed by Iran. Donald Trump added that talks were going very well, but Iran's leadership says the peace proposal floated by the US was excessive and unfair. Ross Cullen reports from the Turkish city of Van, near the Iran border.
It's understood that back-channel talks are being held between Washington and Tehran, with various countries involved in conveying messages back and forth. According to reports in the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump is considering sending another 10,000 ground troops to the Middle East ahead of a possible incursion into Iran.
India is cutting taxes on petrol and diesel as concerns mount over a hike in fuel prices due to the war in West Asia. The cut could help oil-selling companies recoup some of their heightened costs due to supply disruptions, and if passed on, could also help consumers save more money. Ishan Garg tells us more from New Delhi.
The Indian government has cut down excise duty on petrol and diesel by roughly 10% each, but it's unclear if that benefit will actually reach the common public. Analysts say it will help oil companies, most of which are government-owned, manage their costs. Concerns about fuel inflation have been looming since the war in Gulf started a month ago. India relies on imported fuel for about 80% of its needs, and the country is preparing for the long haul, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi warning of hard times ahead if the conflict drags on. He's holding a meeting with the chiefs of Indian states on Friday with an eye on managing fuel supplies.
Pakistan's aviation sectors incurred losses of around $72 million as airspace disruptions linked to the Iran war continued to ripple across the region. Hundreds of flights to Middle Eastern countries are being cancelled each day, affecting passengers and businesses reliant on regional connectivity. Hira Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
Pakistani officials say flights to Dubai, Doha, Abu Dhabi, Muscat and Sharjah have been severely disrupted amid the ongoing regional crisis. They warn the situation is taking a toll on passengers and dealing a heavy blow to the aviation sector. Pakistan's national carrier, PIA, has cancelled more than 500 flights so far. Flights that are still operating are being forced to take longer routes, driving up fuel consumption and insurance costs linked to war risk exposure.
And US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is joining G7 counterparts in France for talks on the conflict in Iran and the war in Ukraine. The UK is among several powers expressing concerns over Moscow allegedly sharing intelligence with Tehran to help them target US forces. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. You can get your thoughts on the air by calling 603-283-6160. Forkfest 2026 has had multiple changes, so please pay attention as this info may be new to you. June 22nd through 29th at the Northern Waters Outfitters Campground in Errol, New Hampshire. The owner has offered to host 100 campers at his campground, which is being closed just for Forkfest. Anyone else who'd like to stay in the surrounding area may come for a day pass, which is free. The only real restriction he's given us for this event is no nudism. That's Mayfest if you want to do that, which I think we can deal with after the crazy restrictions Rogers started imposing. Forkfest.party for more info and forkfest2026@gmail.com to sign up as one of the 100 campers that will fit in the campground. In the studio tonight, it's Stu,
Riley O'Bill,
and Mark Edge.
We were discussing 50 things Americans agree on.
Yeah, those few things that we think that Americans agree on maybe aren't so scant But it seems like many of these things that are in here, and I'm skipping over some boring ones, but I haven't honestly seen one that I really like. I mean, here's one that says inflation is serious. Yeah, inflation is serious.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see things like social welfare programs are fine, I don't think I agree. Social welfare programs are often demonized by GOP politicians, but the majority of Americans overwhelmingly support these programs. When broken down by government benefit programs, 79% of Americans have favorable views of Social Security, 79 of Medicare, 77 of disability insurance, 76 have favorable views of Medicaid, 74% have favorable views of SNAP, 71% have favorable views of TAMF, temporary assistance for needy families, 71 have favorable views of unemployment insurance, and 67 have favorable views of public housing assistance. And I'm not surprised, unsurprisingly, these numbers seem to mirror the people that don't pay much, if any, income tax. And I know that it feels like you're paying income tax because you're paying some Social Security tax, which your employer is matching. But in reality, if you remove the Social Security tax, the vast majority of Americans are not paying much at all. And a good percentage of them are actually getting something from like the earned income family tax credit or whatever it might be.
That's right.
So it's about 20% of people pay and like really pay. I think that there's a little margin below 20%, maybe something like, the people who pay are in the, 30 to 20% kind of bracket. They pay a little, but essentially people who are, the 70% of people who are below 30% of the wages, they're paying nothing. And what a surprise. 79% of Americans have a favorable view of this thing or that thing. I don't think the Social Security and Medicare are exactly fair here because those are separate programs that you pay into. So they have a slightly higher favorability. But, disability insurance, Medicaid, SNAP, TAMF, these kind of things. Yeah. About the same amount of people who don't pay income tax also support these programs.
Yeah, that's an interesting viewpoint. In my opinion, you could toss all of these out.
Yeah, and I think that it would be a good thing. I think that if supporting people who really need your support is a good thing, that in somewhere in the marketplace, charities or whatever will step up and do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then this, the social safety net that has become a hammock, that's what will be destroyed, right? Is that no church is going to let you just hang around, and you'll give you some assistance, but they're not going to let you just hang around month after month after month.
Nor should they.
Hey, I'm crazy. I can't work.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're kind of getting told by Sarah earlier.
Yeah.
Yep. The way the Mormon Church handles that is, if they can't get you to where you're self-sufficient, they have several jobs they can put you into, and they'll put you to work.
Right,
and they'll take care of you.
Plan.
So
I think so too.
Yeah, there are ways that this can be handled without, the theft that people call taxation.
Absolutely. One thing I think Social Security probably does. I'm sure that many of these programs that drive fathers out of homes, because your family can't get as much with two incomes. So what's mom do? She says, well, I can keep dad around, but I can't marry him, or whatever. And then the bond isn't quite as tight. So, maybe dad goes away after a little while or whatever the case may be. And it destroys families in many ways. And Social Security, I think, causes parents to not be so cool to their kids. I mean, maybe you'd treat your kid better if you realized, well, this is my social safety net here. I better treat him better.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, but I think it's kind of it's a misleading promise. It's supposed to supplement you in your old age, but it's by the time you've paid in dollars that were valued at market rate, that could actually buy goods. When you get those back, they're going to be so well inflated that, loaf of bread is up 300% from where it was when you were paying in, and it's not going to be the support that you were hoping for.
Right. Some people will not save for retirement. They just won't do it.
Right.
Some people will always save for retirement, and there's nothing whatever program you put out there, it doesn't make a difference. But there's this amount of people, and I wouldn't call it in the middle, but there's this percentage of people who, if you take from them a certain amount every month and you say it's for retirement, they won't save. But if you didn't, they would.
Mm-hmm.
And, and save is whatever it is, becomes part of a community, whatever the situation is. In some way, guarantee that you're taken care of in your old age. And it's those people that are harmed the most by Social Security, because Social Security isn't a promise to take care of you in your old age. It's a promise that we will give you the minimum possible for you to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, dog food and housing projects, it's not good. And that's where it really leaves people astray. They're like, I feel like I was betrayed by this system. And were they? Well, they didn't do enough research. That's for sure.
Yeah, that was always
they
the
wanted
intention.
to trust the Social Security system to take care of them, not realizing that government is inflating the value of your currency in favor of, feeding the welfare people rather than taking care of inflation and managing it by, not spending as much.
That's right. Your government doesn't care about you.
No, they just want your vote. And they are willing to throw some crumbs out there in order to get it, especially the Democratic Party. But yeah, they neither party actually cares about you.
No, how could they?
How could they?
Yeah.
How could they? How could they?
Yeah,
they really couldn't.
How can you have representatives that don't even know you? Such a strange
care about
notion.
You.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just people who are, they're the person that's in that geographic area that's best suited to lie to you, right? They tell the most convincing lies. Ladies and gentlemen, I care deeply about my constituents, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, that's what the system was designed to do, is to elevate the person who is the best at lying.
Yeah. You had Bill Clinton saying, I feel your pain, and all of that.
He doesn't feel anyone's pain at all.
No. Nope.
He probably felt the pain of those young ladies that he molested there on Epstein Island.
Nah, I bet he was too coked up to feel much pain at all.
Yeah, maybe you can see the tears running down their faces. Who knows?
I bet they felt the pain, but
I bet they did. Let's go on to the next one. Americans agree we see too many political ads.
Yes, we do.
Some countries have legal limits on candidate ads. For instance, Canada's campaign season is typically less than 3 months. In Mexico, it's 90 days, as though that's some kind of difference in 3 months. In Argentina, it's 60 days. This is for really, truly written for stupid people. It's 60 days. In France, election campaigning is usually about 2 weeks long. Meanwhile, in America, candidates announce they're running up to 2 years in advance. But that doesn't mean we like it. The majority of Americans, 64%, believe that there are too many political ads. I guess I have to agree with them. I don't like it, but I, at the same time, wouldn't propose to stop it. Whatever. This is what your system has wrought, ladies and gentlemen. It is so valuable right now to become president or a senator or a representative that the parties are willing to spend millions and millions of dollars to get there. And more importantly, wealthy people, corporations are willing to donate in order to get those positions, to get the favors from people who get into those positions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it comes down to. And I mean, Americans know it. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
We have to get the politicians who benefit from this, cui bono, right? Who benefits? We have to get the politicians who benefit from this to stop it. And they're not going to stop it.
No, they're not going to stop it. This is even the part that everybody knows about. It's it gets a lot more shady than that. But that, I mean, most people do know that that's how it is. Your government's for sale to the highest bidder.
The next one. This is what we call talk radio hell. Are you guys prepared?
Yeah, let's get
do
into it.
You know what talk radio hell is, guys?
Not exactly, but I'm sure you'll tell us.
Abortion.
Oh.
Abortion should be legal in many cases. On June 24, 2020, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion federally. Since then, many states have outlawed or restricted abortion. But most Americans disagree with the court, according to this poll. 64% believe abortion should be legal in most or all cases, and 59% believe that Roe v. Wade shouldn't have been overturned. Now, I would disagree. I think Roe v. Wade was bad law. I don't think that it, we currently, states decide what homicide is and how it's defined. But for some reason, the killing of infants needed to be federally allowed. And I just think that's wrong. Now, I think everybody can agree that, the terminology I use, they know where I'm at, but they don't. I, in fact, believe that if you are committed enough to go to Planned Parenthood or some other abortion clinic and kill your offspring, your unborn offspring, that you should. I absolutely think you should, because you clearly are an unfit mother. And that kid is very likely to grow up and be awful.
Yeah, I sort of agree along those lines. Epigenetic expression can turn out a lot of different ways, and I don't think that sometimes the fruit does fall quite a ways from the tree. But
it does.
My only concern about this approach is this approach might incentivize people for just, I'll just have sex and have a hookup or whatever, and if I get pregnant, I'll just abort the baby. So I can understand the concern behind that, but also I agree with you, Mark, that if you're going to go through it, then you should just go through with it, because you're going to be a bad mom anyway. You're irresponsible.
Well, yeah, and I agree that what you're doing there is you've murdered your offspring. However, I don't think it's any of the state's business whether you're going to murder your offspring.
I don't use the term murder. I like homicide. Homicide simply says the killing of a human.
Okay. Oh, murder has that denotes what do they call it? Premeditation. Is that right?
It doesn't necessarily, but it I just don't like that term personally. I think homicide is as factual as you can get. But yeah,
I tend to use murder because it's a little more offensive, and the killing of an unborn baby is kind of offensive to me.
I think it's funny that the vast majority of people that are pro-life vote Republican, and therefore are trying to save the people in the party that are on the other side, because it's true. Democrats probably comfortably have 80% of the abortions. And Democrats who are in the benefiting side of those voters are like, no, just kill them. Like it's crossways, and generally the parties don't go that way. You will have a very difficult time finding a pro-life liberal. I know a couple, but they don't want, of course, somebody to be locked up, and I wouldn't either want a doctor locked up for these things. But that's about the only thing you can do, right? Yeah. You could that's what our system's designed to do, is lock up people who do bad things. So that's all you can do, is lock up doctors.
That's not a very good system. There's a good healthy dose of shame. I think we go a lot longer way with that than being put in a cage for a little while.
And this is the difference between the parties, right? Like the belief systems of them. I don't think you can shame Democrats by the pro-lifers saying, hey, that's bad. Like, we've been trying that for decades, and it's just not working.
That's true. It just seems to outrage them and make them want to do it more.
Now, I would point out that this is another one of those you bake the cake situations, because the vast majority of people who are affected by this are in Republican states. So it's just going to cause the leftists in the Republican states to leave more so. And maybe if you care deeply enough about it, the righties to move out of the Democratic states. I really wonder about Democrats in Utah. And I wonder about Republicans in Portsmouth. Is it Portland? Portland. I mean, they exist, right?
Yeah.
You know, they're there.
Yeah, there's a lot of Democrats, especially in Salt Lake City, Utah. Plenty of them.
Yeah.
They might be the majority at this point.
Is it? I don't know. Are you Mormon or born Mormon?
Yeah. Born into the covenant, as they say. Yes.
Stu and I are both born LDS. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I don't. I didn't know that, and all I know is that there's a lot of good Mormons in the libertarian sphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know why.
it's because Mormonism heaps so much cognitive dissonance on you that your shelf breaks before most Americans, and so you have to deal with things.
Is that really true? You weren't indoctrinated in some way with some minor libertarian beliefs?
Well, I know Joseph Smith has
germinated?
been quoted as saying that he teaches people correct principles and allows them to govern themselves, but the church doesn't operate that way at all. You have a prophet who dictates to you what you should drink and what you should wear.
He
things
said
like
that, but he also ran for president of the United States.
Yeah.
So there's that. And he also talked about setting up an entire nation of his own, and that he would be a new Muhammad to the world. He had a lot of interesting things to say.
He's also made king of the world at some point.
Who's this?
Joseph Smith.
I don't even know what we're talking about.
The founder of the Mormon religion.
Okay. And what is his name?
Joseph Smith.
Joseph Smith. I know Brigham Young, and I guess because of the university.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, well,
he's the guy that took over the majority after Joseph Smith was murdered.
There was a minority?
Yeah.
Yes, the minority followed Joseph Smith's wife and became
the reorganized LDS Church.
Yeah, and now they've renamed, I think, to Community of Christ.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But how majority, how minority was it?
That one was pretty minority.
Okay.
There were also other splinter groups during that time as well, but they're not well known and talked about much.
Yep. And then when polygamy was outlawed, you had further splintering and
yes.
Right. Them I know. They're the fundamentalist LDS.
And then there's
that's
also
the true Mormons.
There's also another group that practices polygamy called the Kingston Group, or they also call themselves the Order. They live in northern Utah. And so, yeah, there are a lot of splinter groups after polygamy.
And here's, I'm curious, maybe you guys know better than me. Polygamy is a system that does not work mathematically, right?
Yeah.
About as many men are born as women. And if you're letting the old guys have 3 wives, that means that for every, that basically all the young guys, or nearly all of them, you'd have to be a real butt kisser in order to survive this grist mill. They don't get wives. What happens?
Well,
How does it work?
in these smaller communities, it really causes a lot of havoc, and they have they colloquially term the young men lost boys. They get rejected from their community. In some cases, they're allowed to come back once they've made a certain amount of money or something like that. But it's very sad for the young men because they're just turned out of the community because there aren't enough prospective wives for them. I don't know how
it's basically
I don't know how it
very
was
high
going to work out.
standards. They put very high standards on the young men, and then when they fail to reach those high standards, they say, "You're out of here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense. That's a good system if you're going to do something this dumb. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know how it was supposed to work on a large scale, except that I know in the early days of it, there was a lot of, marrying the wives of people who had died, or marrying marrying your buddy's wife in secret kind of a thing. There was a lot of weird stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this kind of, marrying widows made sense when men died at 40, but marrying widows when men died at 80 makes a lot less sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
and this was pre-Civil War, so people were still, drinking bad water and then crapping themselves to death. So
yeah,
right? Death at 40 was probably still pretty common then. I don't know what they had in mind for all of this. How that was.
They probably just wanted extra wives, and they didn't really have much in mind.
Oh, that absolutely. That was the drive of it. I don't know if he had a long-term plan for it. Probably not. He switched things up on the fly a lot. He was a crafty guy, Joseph Smith. Studying his history.
He definitely was. I mean, he was treasure digging and putting a rock in a hat and claiming to translate a book. So
it's absolutely the most American religion ever invented.
Yeah. It really is it's a very American invention.
Yep. Americans love a good scam.
That's why they support government and Social Security.
I guess all religions can be boiled down to a few funny little phrases, right? And gone after. I think that one thing that we could agree on, atheist or otherwise, is that this species was evolved or created to believe in a God. Is that everybody does, every society does, and that presumably the societies that did not aren't here. Maybe the Neanderthals were atheists, but whoever they were, whatever they were, they didn't make it.
That's entirely possible.
Yep. Yeah, the history of religion is very fascinating too. The way that paganism was the prevalent, belief across the world at one point, and then Christianity became popular, and then there was kind of this struggle between them, and Christianity kind of paganized, and paganism kind of Christianized, and everything sort of gets mixed together. There's so much, there's so much from the Eastern traditions that mix into the Western traditions, and it's because a lot of it is sort of just allegorical and built on metaphors.
And it appeals. It appeals to people. They want it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, especially with like Mormonism, who doesn't want to be sealed to their family for eternity?
Yeah.
that's their one. That's their biggest golden promise, that they have the power to seal you to your loved ones, so that in the next life.
Does that mean heaven?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, you'll be able to be with
haven't heard the terminology.
With your family forever. Yep. Give us a call. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Fact. The new NSA data center in Utah requires 1.7 million gallons of water every single day to operate. Billions of Fourth Amendment violations need massive computers and the water to cool them. That water is being supplied by the state of Utah. Fact. There's absolutely nothing in the Constitution which requires your state to help the feds violate your rights. Our message to Utah: turn it off. No water equals no NSA data center. Visit offnow.org.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann with the Week in Review. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Friday that the U.S. can achieve its objectives in Iran without needing to send in American ground troops. Diplomatic efforts to end the conflict are continuing, but Rubio has suggested there was still no direct communications. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
A new timeline for this U.S. operation in Iran now coming from the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, saying that operations would conclude at the appropriate time, but it would be weeks, not months. He said that negotiations had not begun in earnest, but that the U.S. had exchanged messages with Iran and received indications from the Iranians about a willingness to talk. And still in the background is the possibility of U.S. boots on the ground. Rubio, though, said that the U.S. could achieve its goals in Iran without any ground troops.
That came after the US delayed a threat to attack Iran's energy infrastructure to the 6th of April. The US president said the deadline extension request came from Tehran. Donald Trump added that talks were going very well, but Iran's leadership says the peace proposal floated by Washington was excessive and unfair. Ross Cullen reports from the Turkish city of Van near the Iran border.
Iran has not confirmed publicly that it is in direct negotiations with the United States, but it's understood that back-channel talks are being held between Washington and Tehran, with various countries involved in conveying messages back and forth, including Egypt, Pakistan and Turkey. According to reports in the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump is considering sending another 10,000 ground troops to the Middle East ahead of a possible incursion into Iran, on top of the more than 3,000 soldiers already on their way to the Gulf.
A report from the OECD predicts the UK economy will be hit harder than any other industrialised nation due to the conflict in the Middle East, with inflation expected to spike and the jobs market weaken. Stuart Smith has more from London.
Goods and services are likely to get much more expensive much more quickly as the US and Israeli war with Iran drags on, and the United Kingdom is going to be particularly hard hit according to the OECD's analysis. Inflation was predicted to be 2.5% this year, but is now forecast to be 4%. That will impact UK growth more than similar nations like Italy, France and Germany, who analysts say are less exposed to energy shocks. For London, that means a predicted 40% decrease in annual growth this year, even if oil and commodity prices stabilise by summer. The think tank claims efforts to increase domestic energy use and rely less on imported fuels should help. The UK government says it's already doing that, but opposition parties claim the disproportionate impact of the war on the British economy is evidence that the government's policies aren't working.
The International Olympic Committee this week banned transgender women from Olympic competition, saying the new policy promotes fairness. The eligibility change comes after US President Donald Trump signed an executive order last year banning transgender girls and women from competing in female sports ahead of the 2028 Los Angeles Summer Games. Tony Waterman reports.
Under the new policy, only biological females will be allowed to compete in the Olympics starting in 2028. Their sex will be determined by a mandatory one-time genetic test. IOC President Kirsty Coventry said the decision was based on science, which she says shows males have a performance advantage in sports that rely on strength, power, and endurance.
At the Olympic Games, even the smallest margins can be the difference between victory and defeat. So it's absolutely clear that it would not be fair for biological males to compete in the female category.
It's unclear how many, if any, athletes may be impacted. The IOC says these individuals would still be eligible to compete in the male competitions.
And finally, there was some good news this week. An endangered mountain gorilla has given birth to twins in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Conservationists say twin births are very rare in mountain gorillas. Chris Ochimaringa has more from Kinshasa.
Park rangers at the Virunga National Park found a gorilla nursing twins deep in the dense rainforest in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The female gorilla from the Baraka family delivered a female and a male baby. Experts say twins are extremely rare in mountain gorillas, accounting for less than 1% of births. Park rangers are monitoring them to ensure they grow into adults. The Virunga National Park is a very dangerous place for wild animals and park rangers because many rebels and poachers operate in the area. The twins' birth comes 2 months after another gorilla delivered twins.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann, and that was the Week in Review.
According to a study released Thursday by the Princeton University Department of Biology, this local 2-year-old woodland chipmunk has crafted a far more secure and dependable plan for the future than 8 out of 10 Americans. Reporters spoke to citizens to get their view on the study.
Clearly, this chipmunk is pretty impressive. I mean, he wakes up every morning and says, I need to collect acorns and berries for the winter. He sets goals for himself and he gets it done.
He has to make a burrow in a tree stump. That's exactly what he does. He doesn't pause and have a snack and lay around for a few hours.
Out of nearly 40 separate interviews with Americans, 33 told reporters they were very impressed by the chipmunk's continued display of foresight, personal responsibility, and pragmatic decision-making when considering his own future.
He's preparing for winter, he's building a home, and he's trying to get enough nutrients to make it throughout the rest of the day. All this while being worried about maybe getting eaten by a wolf or an owl or something. Earlier this week, the electricity went off in my home because I forgot to pay my bill. It's the second time this year.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. This is Talk Radio you control. You can give us a call and get your thoughts on the air. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. I'd like to thank Nicole for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that Nicole went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks again to Nicole and everyone who supports us. Again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of becoming an amplifier. In the studio tonight, you have Stu,
Riley O'Bill,
and Mark Edge. Hey, I've got to pay a few bills too, if you guys would entertain me for just a moment. For those of you who have cryptocurrency, currently you have cryptocurrency, and you want to access the value in that cryptocurrency without selling it, there's a platform that you need to know about. It's called Salt. And Salt allows you to take a loan against your cryptocurrency. And, you know, it's like any other loan. You pay a little bit of interest, but it's tax-free, right? Like you pay interest instead of paying money to the federal government. Because if you sell it, it's a capital gain, and you have to pay tax on that. If you take a loan against it, it's a lower rate than the tax anyway, and you don't have to pay tax on it. So I think it's a great option. If you're interested in accessing the value of your cryptocurrency that you currently hold now, contact me at salt@markedge.org. That's an email address, salt@markedge.org, and I'll walk you through the process. Further, if you do me a favor and go to your Twitter account and like @MarkEdgeShow and Sally @SallyMayweather, then you can see me do another show on Wednesday nights.
Sounds good.
Nice. So before we go on, we were talking about religion in the last segment, and I want to bring up that it is Palm Sunday today in the Western Christian calendar, at least. And this marks, in their minds, the last week of Jesus' life. And traditionally, they say that this is the day that Jesus came into Jerusalem riding on a donkey, where people were putting their palm fronds and waving their palm fronds and putting down their coats in front of the donkey as he entered Jerusalem. So
there you go. It's Palm Sunday. Happy Palm Sunday to those who celebrate.
Exactly.
Indeed.
All right. So things that Americans agree upon. We've been through quite a list here. At this point, illegal immigration is a problem. A solid 61% believe that illegal immigration is a problem in the United States. Furthermore, 59% of Americans see the situation at the border, at the border as a crisis. So apparently 2% of people do not think it's a crisis, but do think that it's a problem. What are the solutions? I don't know. The politicians sure haven't given us any in this amount of time. And I think it's because they all benefit, right? The Democrats want people to come here and be subjugated so that they feel like, they should be part of the Democratic Party because that's the party of the subjugated people. And the Republicans want to keep these folks illegal because that's what their big donors want, because they're these big corporations that sort of feed off this slave labor market.
Oh, but Mark, people on the right are going to argue that, well, Trump's deporting a ton of illegals already.
Well, I'm sure he's deporting some, but I mean, you can't, how are you going to deport the millions? That's not a solution. That's just talking points. And don't forget that ICE has slowed down ever since they shot a couple of people, that obviously for no good reason. It's just not a winning solution. You can't have a border crackdown without a police state. You might put more people on the border. I get it. Play Red Rover with the immigrants at the border. Fine and dandy, whatever. But you really can't stop what are you going to do about the people that are here? There's not a really good solution for that. As AI gets worse and the big brother gets more intrusive, I think it'll be easier to find illegals. But, just going around and asking people questions, that's a bad system. And it just gives the Democrats more to vote for.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So now I will take the Hoppian stance on this, which is I believe that the United States government owns all the land called the United States. Even if you own your land, you're just a long-term lessor with the right of survivorship. That if you pay tax on your land, and I don't know anybody inside the 48 contiguous states who does not, if you pay tax on your land, to whom are you paying it, and why are you paying it if you own it? Because I own some things, and I do not pay tax on those things. I may have paid a tax when I bought it, but I don't have to pay to keep it. That sounds much more like a rental agreement than it does like an ownership agreement. So I would contend that the United States government, by proxy, of all these states and counties and whatever, owns the government, and therefore, at the very least, I would contend that your state owns your property, and therefore, they are the ones who can come up with the immigration policy, and that you are voluntary serf on their land.
That's about right.
If you want to be not a voluntary serf, then you need to pick another location, and I can tell you about those locations, but I would contend the vast majority of people listening to me are better off just understanding that you're a voluntary serf rather than, and you just give it up. This isn't a government by the people, of the people, for the people. It's none of those things. You're just the modern version of a subject, right? The king changed from one leader 5,000 miles away to 5,000 leaders 1 mile away. But the power didn't. The power's still there. You're still a serf on the land, and you still have to pay your quittance, your bushel of wheat or whatever it is that you've got to give up. And you've got to produce it, and you've got to make it. So there it is. That's, I believe, really the solution. And do I like it? No. I think this country was made great by immigrants. And I think we'd be better off if we would simply come up with an immigration policy that would steal all the good people of all the other countries away from them and leave them with, the criminals and the rapists and the evil people.
Yeah.
But
seems like it should be doable too.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
It'd be absolutely easy. Hey, score 138 on one of our IQ tests that we administer in, your country at our embassy, and we'll let you come in. Or, pay us $100,000 and we'll let you have a citizenship, but you have to denounce your old one, or whatever it is. These are just things that are coming off the top of my head and bringing this up. And I'm sure that brighter minds can come up with better systems than even this. But it's absolutely ludicrous that the United States sends people away that would work hard and pay taxes and brings people in that want to get paid to be here.
That's right. They deport the roofer and they bring in the welfare recipient.
Well, the right always says, well, I love immigration, but I just want them to come here legally.
Sure. And if it's easier to swim the Rio Grande than it is to climb the mountain of bureaucracy, anybody who says that has never experienced what it's like to try to get into this country.
I agree.
It's difficult, and it gets more and more difficult every year. I'm dealing with it right now.
I don't even like a little bit of paperwork. I bet that's a whole lot of paperwork.
Yeah. And a whole lot of lawyer fees, I imagine, if you can get one.
That's what it really comes down to, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Well, somebody else who's got an opinion on immigration, I'm sure, is David in New Mexico. So we'll go to the phones. David, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Thanks for that segue, Mark. Swim the Rio Grande. In fact, I was down swimming the Rio Grande, getting my back wet a couple summers ago on a good American holiday, Labor Day. And when I came back to my truck after wetting my back in the Rio Grande, some illegals, a whole SUV full of 6 illegals, were driving off, and my battery was missing out of my truck.
Oh, they like batteries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So thank you, illegal immigration, okay? And the illegals that live next door to me, I've had to call the cops on them literally 100 times in the 2 years that they've been here, because they don't behave like we do. So, no, I don't totally disagree with you, Mark. I agree with you, and I disagree with you in probably equal parts. And rather than me just shotgunning it, let me ask you, Mark, if you would please pick one of the points that you just laid out, and I would like to speak to whatever point that you choose.
I think that the United States should have some system, be it IQ test or, military service or money, whatever, in order to allow people to jump the line in immigration.
I agree with you, Mark. I think that's a great idea, because I love it that you are very warfare oriented, because that is the same warfare techniques that, for instance, the Chinese are using against you right now, or against we'll leave Mark out of it because he'll deny that he's part of it, against me. And I would allege the rest of our nation and the rest of the world. There's a phrase for that type of warfare, unrestricted warfare. The Chinese generals wrote a book on it, right? And that's one of the things that's a good modern warfare tactic, is to, aside from prior to, in addition or before labeling it as unrestricted warfare, it was also a good, social policy and a good business policy to, recruit the best and the brightest from wherever you can get them. And then the warfare part of it is that you're denying the use of those brains and brawn from your enemies, which is everybody else, especially the ones that aren't white. That's I threw that in there for effect.
I'm not sure where this comes with the Chinese. I need a little help here.
There is a book, and I'm sure that Stu and
is this the 3-body problem?
Very well. Pardon?
The 3-body problem?
I don't know. Stu probably knows what I'm talking about. If he does, he's welcome to interject. Or Riley. There was a book, an actual book or paper or treatise or whatever, that was written by I believe it's 3 high-ranking Chinese generals on unrestricted warfare, and that we're experiencing right now. It's in full effect against us, China against the whole world, but especially the United States. Stu, let me just come out and ask Stu, Riley, do you know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea what you're talking about, honestly. Sorry,
there's a book
Okay,
called
if anybody-
Unrestricted Warfare, is an
Not
influential
exactly.
military strategy book by PLA Colonels Kwai Ling and Wang Zhangshu, focusing on defeating
Wang Zhang,
technologically superior opponents.
Yeah, okay, so I had
Non-traditional
the rank
means,
wrong. Yeah, so I had the rank wrong.
economic,
That's-
cyber, legal, and terror.
There you go. So all of that. So that's exactly what we're talking about. So I agree with
So
you, though.
it's
I mean, that's
it's good to bring in smart people because we will use them in a terror war against China. I need help.
I'm being facetious and sarcastic, okay? But
Okay.
but actually,
So it's bad.
Actually,
It's bad to bring in intelligent people
no,
because
it's
they will
both-
be
it's
used
both good-
against
it's both
us.
good- It's good and bad. It's good and
Okay.
bad. The bottom line is the good outweighs the bad because
Okay.
this addresses something. This is, and let me, what I'm about to say in addressing that point, how it's good and bad, and that the good outweighs the bad, also addresses another point that you made earlier on this subject, and you'll see what it is here in a moment. And that's how to filter them out. So bring in the best and the brightest. And yes, when you bring them in. Oh, and by the way, when I was in college, I lived in a rooming house that had 20 rooms, and 12 of them were occupied by Chinese spies. They were all graduate students. And so, but what you do is you bring in the best and the brightest, and yes, China will sneak in their spies because they're all spies. But then you have to have filtering process in place. And there's nothing wrong with papers, please, because if you are a society without papers, please, you will become the American Indian.
So where was the paper please acceptable? So like somebody, standing around saying, you need to have, well, for instance, right there on Interstate 10 and Interstate 40, I think 40 goes near your house. They have checkpoints where they will stop every car and ask you if you're a U.S. citizen. Now, it's easy to just, be me and go through, but I didn't do that. I said, am I being detained? Do you have reasonable articulable suspicion that I've committed a crime? And kind of went through this little rigmarole with them. You can find it on YouTube. I'm not sure what it's under, but I'm sure it's am I being detained is somewhere in there. And it's I don't like the idea personally of being detained without reasonable articulable suspicion because I consider it unconstitutional.
Let me address what you just said. I agree with you under normal circumstances, but what you're not factoring in is that, some other people, not you and me, created this country. And if they hadn't done that for us, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But they did that. And so we're having this conversation. And when they created this country for us that we're in now, instead of this being, Britain or whatever it would be with a different set of rules, they made some rules. And part of the rules is pertaining to the border. The rules are not the same as other than the border. And the rules about...
Well, this isn't at the border, though. 40 doesn't go through the border. 40's inside the country checkpoint. So these are...
The border is not considered to be one line. The Border Patrol has jurisdiction, I believe, to like 100 miles inside of the border.
Or 200 miles or 500 miles or, who knows?
I believe it's 100.
If they can arbitrarily say 100 miles, can't they arbitrarily say 1,000?
Well, they could, but they didn't do it arbitrarily. I'm certain, and I can't cite it, but I'm certain that if I did research it, we could find the enabling legislation that non-arbitrarily, although I guess it's arbitrary if you got a bunch of humans sitting around deciding, okay, how many miles? Okay, 100. Yeah. On one hand, it's arbitrary. On the other hand, there was some sort of logic, reason, deduction that went into them concluding that 100 miles is a reasonable number. But they put it into law, and they did the enabling legislation. I'm sure, and it probably.
I'm sure of that too. I'll concede that. What I would further, spar with you on this one is that the founders who did write that Constitution didn't see fit to enable the federal government to handle immigration. They only gave them naturalization, and that left immigration to the states. Now, unfortunately, I think that very likely Arizona and Texas would be very strict with their borders, but I don't think New Mexico, that wrote its constitution in both Spanish and English, would be quite so draconian.
Well, I don't know that if you come here and you talk to New Mexican. Well, actually, they don't speak like that. That's Mexican. But the New Mexicans here are not big fans of Mexicans per se, especially when they come across the border illegal. They don't consider themselves at all. And you can find videos recorded in downtown Albuquerque of some Mexicans that were here doing off-road racing, and some New Mexicans that were buddies with them doing some off-road racing, consider themselves to be cousins, but we're not the same people. We're different people. And so they don't consider it all the same, even though, back before New Mexico became a U.S. territory, even after it became a territory, the New Mexicans that were here after it became a territory were referred to as Mexicans if they were non-white, because they used to be Mexicans, so they're Mexicans. But so nowadays, the citizens, what percent of the citizens, I don't know, but a lot of, slightly tanned native New Mexicans whose families have been here for 400 years, going all the way back to the conquistadors, they're not down with the Mexicans coming illegally across the border. For one thing, they're also, the ones that come across the border illegal are typically, they're Indians. They're American Indians. And the New Mexicans that we're talking about are a mix of Spaniard and American Indian, like 85-15 kind of thing. And so I kind of went off a little bit. So did that give you any insight as to New Mexico?
Interestingly, people who are Indian or First Nation, as they call them in Canada, can move across the U.S.-Canadian border with no issues at all. It's part of a treaty. But people who are Indian, sort of unrecognized Indian tribes from Mexico, don't have the same advantages. And I think that's because, if the tribe is from north of the Rio Grande and the concomitant lines that go with it, then they're Indians. But if it's south, they're just Mexicans.
Well, that's a racism thing on the part of the Mexicans. Because here's the deal: he was a close friend. We're not in contact anymore, but he was basically my singular best friend for several years, and his name was Ignacio Salazar, and he was born in Mexico. And every morning he would wake up and he would cross the border and come to school in the United States, not Lordsburg. It doesn't matter. If I think of it, I'll tell you. But anyway, he would come across the border, go to school, and then go back across the border and go home, because they could just go back and forth across the border and get free school in the United States and instead of Mexico. And so he just, at one point, as an adult, started living here and lived here all of his life. Now, he was mad at his own family because his own family told him that he was, Spaniard. And he found out as an adult that he had a good percentage in specific ancestors that were 100% Indian, Native American. And the point there is, why, Nacho? Why that? Well, because they're racist. They try to sweep it under the carpet. They don't want it to be known that they have mixed race in their family. It's a up one down. You're low class if you're an Indian, and you're higher class if you're all Spaniard. And so that's what they did, because it's racist, and that was all in Mexico. We didn't do that to them.
Absolutely. And then that was true here, with, say, blacks in Louisiana. You'd have quadroons or octoons or whatever, and people would pass. I don't think that's evidence of racism, personally. I think it's evidence of practicality. If you can do better by being part of the in-group than you can by being part of the out-group, and who can't, then be part of the in-group if you can be part of the in-group.
True, but like I said, in the case that I gave, they were actually embarrassed of it and tried to hide it because they didn't want anybody to know. Not just that they would take advantage of being able to, pass.
Well, that's the best way for people not to know. They probably presumed that if they told their son that he was a Spaniard as opposed to an Indian, then their son would repeat that, and it would make the lie more true. And this was before 23andMe, and people would know these things. And who could predict that? I didn't. I couldn't predict it. I didn't think about it at the very least, and I didn't hear any predictions. And so I give the parents lots of leeway in this. I don't call that racism. I don't call that unacceptable. But I also don't think.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Brussels, I'm William Denslow. The United States has delayed a threat to attack Iran's energy infrastructure to April 6th. The US President said the deadline extension request came from Tehran, though that's not yet been confirmed by Iran. Donald Trump added that talks were going very well, but Iran's leadership says the peace proposal floated by the US was excessive and unfair. Ross Cullen reports from the Turkish city of Van, near the Iran border.
It's understood that back-channel talks are being held between Washington and Tehran, with various countries involved in conveying messages back and forth. According to reports in the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump is considering sending another 10,000 ground troops to the Middle East ahead of a possible incursion into Iran.
India is cutting taxes on petrol and diesel as concerns mount over a hike in fuel prices due to the war in West Asia. The cut could help oil-selling companies recoup some of their heightened costs due to supply disruptions, and if passed on, could also help consumers save more money. Ishan Garg tells us more from New Delhi.
The Indian government has cut down excise duty on petrol and diesel by roughly 10% each, but it's unclear if that benefit will actually reach the common public. Analysts say it will help oil companies, most of which are government-owned, manage their costs. Concerns about fuel inflation have been looming since the war in Gulf started a month ago. India relies on imported fuel for about 80% of its needs, and the country is preparing for the long haul, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi warning of hard times ahead if the conflict drags on. He's holding a meeting with the chiefs of Indian states on Friday with an eye on managing fuel supplies.
Pakistan's aviation sectors incurred losses of around $72 million as airspace disruptions linked to the Iran war continue to ripple across the region. Hundreds of flights to Middle Eastern countries are being cancelled each day, affecting passengers and businesses reliant on regional connectivity. Hira Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
Pakistani officials say flights to Dubai, Doha, Abu Dhabi, Muscat and Sharjah have been severely disrupted amid the ongoing regional crisis. They warn the situation is taking a toll on passengers and dealing a heavy blow to the aviation sector. Pakistan's national carrier, PIA, has cancelled more than 500 flights so far. Flights that are still operating are being forced to take longer routes, driving up fuel consumption and insurance costs linked to war risk exposure.
And US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is joining G7 counterparts in France for talks on the conflict in Iran and the war in Ukraine. The UK is among several powers expressing concerns over Moscow allegedly sharing intelligence with Tehran to help them target US forces. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. All you have to do is call 603-283-6160 and you can talk to us. The us here tonight is Stu,
Riley O'Bill,
and Mark Edge.
And we do have callers on the line, so we're going to go to Lamar, Colorado. What's on your mind tonight?
listening to the show for the first time. Very interesting topics. I'm curious about your checkpoint that you went through on I-10 and I-40. How were you able to prove your U.S. citizenship when you were questioned?
Sure. This one was in particular outside of El Paso on I-10. And I can't tell you the year, but I'm going to say 8 to 10 years ago. And
okay.
they didn't ask me to prove it was really just a situation where, a Hispanic looking gentleman says, what's your citizenship? Right. And I'm like, I'm not giving you my citizenship. Am I being detained? And
am I free to go?
Am I free to go? No, you're not being detained. Okay, then I'll leave. No, you can't leave. Oh, then I'm being detained. What reasonable articulable suspicion do you have that I've committed a crime? You're not being detained, right? Like it's this sort of roundabout thing that goes on for a little while. Then they take some dogs to sniff the car. And then I say, well, what are you looking for? See, I knew this was a drug stop. We're not looking for drugs. We're looking for immigrants, illegal immigrants. And I said, well, what do they smell like? Because there's people in the car, right? And I remember that was a great quip. What do they smell like? And fundamentally, it's a very privileged thing to do. I was in no risk whatsoever because at any point I could say I was born in Sarasota, Florida, and I know it, right?
I can't say that. I was born overseas. My dad was active duty military. My mother was born over in France. My grandparents were in an internment camp in East Germany during World War II. So my mother came to the States in 1953 through Ellis Island to become a U.S. citizen and later married my father. Because she was Polish, my father, being active duty Army, lost his top secret security clearance because of her former citizenship, being close to Russia. I am a U.S. citizen. I'm a military veteran. I even held ATS clearance, and the only way to hold that is to be a U.S. citizen and only a U.S. citizen. But when we get into these things about are you a citizen papier and beta with the Border Patrol stuff, yeah, I wasn't born here, guys, but I am a citizen. How do I prove that to you?
Yeah, that's I suspect it just comes down to accent, and yours passes the muster. They're not even going to ask a question when it comes to it. They're there looking for the obvious, situation. But
yeah, I pass through those things non-verbally all the time. They'd ask the question, and I'd give kind of a half a head nod, and they'd be like, "All right, on your way."
And previously, that's what I had done too. This was I just ran up on somebody who wasn't going to let me through. Well,
That's
thanks for the call.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Have a good day.
You too.
Yep.
Thanks for the call. Always nice to have a new caller.
Absolutely.
We've got Creighton in Kentucky, who is not a new caller, but is a good caller. Creighton, what's on your mind?
Hi, guys. It's been a long time since I called, in part because I've been on a kind of a no-screens digital internet fast. And it's an interesting thing that when you experience something like that in the middle of a war. So I started right at the beginning of the attack on Iran, and I was kind of surprised that it was still going on when I came out of it. And I'm interested in my spirit host's opinion on this whole thing with Iran. Mark Edge, my spirit host.
Yep.
What do you think about what's going on over there?
Well, just to remove all doubt from anybody's mind, I was against this war before it started, and I'm against the next one that started too. And I don't care which one of the megalomaniacs that are occupying the White House starts it. But I was impressed with the Venezuelan conflict over and done with in an instant, right? Like they toppled a country in an hour or something. Impressive. I'm not supporting it. I'm just impressed. And with this one, it doesn't seem like it's going quite so well. the idea that Trump and his he's responsible. He's the guy calling the shots. And there was a elementary school full of kids that was killed, and I think it's terrible and it's sad, and that's the cost of war. And personally, I'm not willing to pay it. So, go and have your war, but not with me.
Yeah. Personally, I think he stepped right in it with this one. Like you said, the Venezuela thing went off without a hitch. And I think some of
he got a little too cocky.
Some
Trump
of his
did.
advisors were just telling him, "Look, we can do Iran next, and it'll go off exactly the same way." But
Cuba after that.
But he didn't do his reading up because Iran's been waiting for this for a long time. They were not surprised by it.
I'm a veteran in the Marine Corps, and that gives me a different perspective than most libertarians. Generally speaking, I have a bias against war, but I am not anti-war. And I had to look at this one, and my opinion is a little different, I think, than Marquez's. The thing of it is that I look at it the same way you look at when two people fighting. The rule about who threw the first punch, and if you look at it in the short term, you look at and you think, well, obviously Donald Trump threw the first punch, and I don't think that's true. Because if you look at the totality of what the things that have happened since the current regime in Iran has taken over, you can connect either directly or indirectly Iran, the government of Iran, to practically everything that has gone badly or wrong or harshly in the Middle East.
I disagree.
Okay, you can disagree. That's fine.
You're going to make the claim that Israel hasn't been the cause of anything bad in the Middle East?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'm not pro-Israel. I'm not pro-government. I think Israel's government is just as bad as most other governments. But Iran's government, its current government anyway, is uniquely bad. And that they have been not necessarily throwing punches, but throwing fake punches and pulling their punches like right at the last inch of our nose for the West's nose for 50 years.
So I don't know if you know how these things work, but what actually happens is a banker sneaks up in between two guys and he punches one of them and then moves. And when the guy turns around and he sees not the banker, he gets in a fight with the wrong guy, and that's how it works. And the banker always benefits. All wars are bankers' wars.
All wars are bankers' wars, but not all bankers benefit.
No, not all bankers benefit, but there is always a banker that benefits.
Maybe. I will not contest. I'll give you that given. But based on the idea that Iran has been involved in so much chaos in the Middle East for the past 50 years, and the United States in particular, but the West in general, has been trying very hard to reduce the chaos. It seems like to me,
like fomenting coups and placing sanctions on countries, and that's how you keep order.
Yes,
regime changes and starving populations.
Well, one does wonder, being the preferred trading partner of China, it hasn't exactly worked for dealing with that regime either. I don't know what the best solution for propagating regime changes around the world. I mean, I can see the point where a direct intervention, as opposed to wishing for good luck, happens. But when it comes to the trolley scenario, I say the guy who pulled the lever's responsible. Right. And Trump decided in the trolley scenario that it was worth pulling the lever, that he would, the benefits would outweigh the costs. And, I mean, I just think that by pulling the lever, he became responsible for what was going on over there in a way that he wasn't previous responsible for. I do have a question that in a modern world, when the people obviously want regime change and they can't get it because technology has gotten to the point that it allows totalitarian governments to have so much power, then what do other countries do? I don't have an answer to that. And like you, Crichton, I shall not shed a tear over any of the, the leadership of Iran that might be killed here and there. But I do wonder what the mothers and fathers of those children that were killed say about U.S. intervention. Like, does it seem worth it to them? And I suspect the answer is no.
I also suspect the answer would be no.
We definitely did see a lot of videos of young people in Iran favoring a regime change, but that doesn't mean
I'm highly skeptical on those.
That's not useful information, because that's a cherry picked viewpoint, and definitely does not necessarily represent anything close to the majority of the population. But that's also beside the point, because if I think the goal is actually to deplete Iran's ammunition, and I think that's doing a wonderful job of doing that.
So tell me of that tactic. Maybe you're looking at this differently than I am. I don't know how many missiles Iran has. I suspect they were lying about it. I had a friend who was a quartermaster for U.S. Tank Battalion, and he said that any given moment that 1/3 of their tanks were out of commission. Now, I know I can go up online and look at how many tanks the U.S. has and how many Russia has and these kind of things. I would presume these numbers are even greater for Russia, but 1/3 of U.S. tanks are out of commission at any given time. At the end of their war game training that goes on for a week or 2 weeks, I can't remember what he said, that at that point, another 1/3 of their tanks are out of commission. So presuming that these tanks are coming in and out of service all the time, about half of our tanks are out of commission at any one time. I presume Iran, who's been under sanctions for decades, that is building these missiles, that they have a difficult time finding parts and fuel and all these things. I've heard stories about the Chinese military using the rocket fuel to cook up whatever marmot they managed to catch recently, and I suspect that those sorts of things go on in very poor places, and so I kind of think they don't have anywhere near the missiles that we've been told, and I'm kind of wondering if they're out of missiles almost entirely.
Well, probably, and I can say that with near certainty, because they just recently released 3,500 Marines of Apache helicopter and A-10 Warthog units to go over there. And both of those weapon systems are ground attack, but they're also very vulnerable to missiles, to surface-to-air missiles. So you don't introduce those weapon systems into an environment where you don't have absolute control of the air. So just the very fact that they're bringing those out of mothballs, because basically both those systems are old.
Right. The A-10 was retired, essentially. You're not kidding when you say mothballed. They tried to give them to the Ukrainians, so they're like, hell no, we don't want them. We'd rather not go up in the air than go up in an A-10. But the claim is that the A-10 is uniquely suited to take down these bathtubs that the Iranians are calling their Navy at this point.
And they are. Attack from the air to hit surface targets, exactly what the A-10 is good at. It's just a flying Gatling gun.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. Well, Crichton, you haven't convinced me to support the war, but you knew you weren't going to anyway. But yeah. I do appreciate, I have some, commiseration with where you're at on the point, but, I just can't, I know how inefficient the government is. I kind of feel like the Trump administration is just attempting to distract us from perhaps some more domestic issues that they wish would go away.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And thanks for the call tonight, Creighton. I can't get behind the war or pretty much any war. I've never seen a proper justification that made me say, yeah, that war we definitely should have gotten involved in.
Is there
not
none?
even World War One? Not
Historically?
one war. Nope,
no,
not
I wouldn't.
one.
I'm against World War One, but I think that, well, what about when the Texans took Mexico from took Texas from Mexico, and then the United States intervened and essentially beat Santa Anna. I think that that's probably the most justifiable war that I can come up with in U.S. history. I know a lot of people want me to say World War II and the Nazis and those kind of things, but I don't think you can separate World War I and the decisions that the Allied powers made there from World War II. Those decisions, had concomitant issues, and I'm just not prepared to agree with World War II. But I think that like the Mexican-American War, is the most justifiable. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess that might be the closest to justifiable, but I still couldn't get behind it.
What about the Revolutionary War?
That was the one I was going to go with, Riley. Thank you. Go ahead.
I think
Riley.
I think the Revolutionary War was more of a a show than anything else. I really don't think there was a lot genuine that happened there. I think it was 50% manufactured and just written into the history books. May not have happened in the first place. And 50% was just, a small group of people who had a plan to do a thing and make it look like something else.
Well, what did they do to make it look like a Revolutionary War? I'm open to the idea.
Thomas Paine pamphlets and, talking about for the cause, Tea Party, that kind of stuff. It very much rings true with modern day propaganda techniques and social engineering.
I think it's social engineering and propaganda techniques. I'm not disagreeing with that part. But the question is, what occurred and what didn't occur. This is the difficulty of my job as a talk show host, is I have to look at some things. Something out there is a fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, some of it is just fabrications. I don't have an answer. I feel like the Revolutionary War has been whitewashed, and we didn't hear about many of the loyalists that got tarred and feathered and things like that. That there was, these people were, basically punished without a trial, and that sounds very un-American, but probably happened.
Yeah, and I don't know. A lot of that was probably just political enemies or something that needed to be canceled. In the end result, there was a pause in the war for a little while, and then it started up again in 1812, and that one ended in a draw. I don't think America ever gained their independence exactly. I think they've always been under the control of some very European, they call themselves roundtable groups. And there's a book called Tragedy and Hope that explains all of this very well.
Yeah, I have. The author of Tragedy and Hope has been here on Free Talk Live. I haven't listened to it, and while I often am engrossed in these sort of tales of these smoke-filled rooms where those that would rule us make deals with each other and these
powers
sorts of
that
things.
ought not be.
Mm-hmm.
The powers that ought not be. That is wonderful. I just don't know how to address it. And I'm going to have to give the Revolutionary War, if we're going to call it a war rather than a rebellion, I would have to give it the highest marks as far as U.S. Reasons for war. Now, I will go ahead and take marks away for the reasons that I'm about to give. We literally have an A/B test as to Canada and the United States, right? Like, One of them secedes from the Union, the other one doesn't. They have the same population. Almost everything's the same. And by the way, some loyalists moved north to Canada and those kind of things. And when you look at the Heritage Foundation's Freedom of the World, now Heritage Foundation, no one would accuse them of being some kind of libertarian think tank. I mean, they're conservative. Freest countries I'm looking up. The Canada is actually listed as a freer place than the United States.
That's right.
Here's Freedom House. There's a few different of these. Okay, here it is. Heritage, economicfreedom.heritage.org, Index of Economic Freedom, and view rankings for all countries. By the way, the United States not in the top. Not in the top.
Probably
4
not
here.
Probably not in the top 10 or maybe even 20.
Right. So I'm looking for their overall score. That'll do it. Singapore, Switzerland, Ireland, Australia, Taiwan, Luxembourg, Denmark. By the way, Liechtenstein's too small to make this list, but it would probably be number 1. Denmark, Norway, Estonia, Netherlands, Sweden, New Zealand. These are economic freedoms. You may disagree on something else. Finland, Canada, Lithuania, Iceland, Chile, Cyprus, South Korea, Czech Republic, United States, right under Mauritius and right above the UAE. So
what number on the list is that? Do you know?
It doesn't have a number here, just the way this thing's designed, but I'm going to say it's somewhere around 20. 20 to 30, and Canada's higher. Now, by the way, the raw score is, call it 3 points higher out of 100. Nobody gets 100. Singapore has, scrolling, and by the way, not the most socially free place, but economically quite free. 84.4. Canada is 75.2. The United States is 73. Excuse me, that's Czech Republic. 72.8. So when you look at this, you can see that somebody who did the study found that Canada came out freer than the United States did.
Quite a bit freer.
So a revolutionary war in order to free you from a monarch 5,000 miles away apparently isn't a good choice.
Yeah, it turned out to be a bad trade.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying it's a much worse choice. There's not a big trade here, but the things that we pride ourselves on the most as libertarians may not even be that effectual for gaining freedom. Now, we certainly got independence, but the trade of one monarch 5,000 miles away for 5,000 monarchs 1 mile away, I wouldn't make.
Yeah. Well, some interesting things have come out of it, such as the celebration of the right to bear arms has effectively resulted in a lot of guns in the hands of American citizens, which is a big problem for the powers that ought not be, because they would rather that you not have them so they can boss you around a lot easier.
Yeah, free men can own guns, and the United States is by far the gun-owningest place in the world.
Yeah, it's real gunny.
You can find guns in other places, though. And
we're up against the clock,
guns
Mark.
make you free.
Yep, this has been Free Talk Live. We'll be back next weekend. Thanks for listening. Peace.
If you're looking for work, the person you are applying to is probably so swamped with applicants that he or she is tough to reach. So call early in the day, before 8 a.m., before the palace guards arrive. You'll need your prospect's direct number, and here's a sneaky way to get it. Suppose the company's main number is 555-5000. You should call 555-5012. When someone says, "Good morning, Pam Johnson," you should innocently say, "Oops, somebody here must have written this down wrong. I was calling for Tom Frederick. What's his direct number?" If the very next thing you hear isn't Pam giving you Tom's number, it may be, "Good morning, Tom Frederick." For more tips for job seekers and getting better results in all your day-to-day communication, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives.